everyone, welcome to my channel. Here on the Sheenapreneur channel, I share information about government contracting, veteran business content, and other business tips. What's going on, everyone? It is Sheena, aka Sheenapreneur, your favorite veteran, and I have a super special guest on today. And what's crazy is I didn't even realize she was a veteran. Oh my gosh, I just found out, and she's gonna give her intro, but this woman has actually helped me personally. Everyone I have sent to her has been helped. People that were supposed to be getting benefits 20 years ago, she was able to help them. She is like the guru of all gurus, the expert of all experts when it comes to VA claims. And she is here with graciously giving her time to us. So please make sure that y'all respectful and make sure that y'all are giving her just due, because she absolutely deserves it. I already know that. So Miss Kristen, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Sheena. I don't know that I'm the guru. I'm one of many, but maybe I'm not the favorite veteran though. But I've been doing this for 4 years now, actually longer than that, and I can get to that. But I'm doing it basically because I'm a veteran. I did not know until I went to law school I'm an old baby lawyer. I didn't know that there was such a thing as veterans law, and my law school had a veterans clinic, and I started working with them to get pro bono hours for my law degree. And then I got kind of addicted because I was like, what are they doing? And I mean, as a veteran, I had no idea there was such a thing. I'm like, are they helping them with housing? What are they doing? But they were helping them with VA disability. And so I did my last 3 semesters of law school in the clinic. And even though I went to law school to improve my standing in higher ed at the law school while I was working there, I was like, I'm never going to practice. And here I am. Because it just, once I learned about veterans law, I was like, there's so many people out there. I wish I got out in 93 from the Army. I was a Gulf War vet. Yeah. And when I got out, and so when I got out, nobody told me, here's what you do. This is what you got to do. And I put in a claim for an injury to my elbow when I was in Desert Storm. And of course, there's no medical records because nobody was humping around a filing cabinet on their back. You know, they send you the medic, they throw Motrin at you, put a sling on you, and off you go and suck it up. So, I wish somebody had been there to pull me aside and say, this is what you need to do. This is how I guide you. And that's what we do here. We are happy to take people who've never filed claims, people who've been denied. We pretty much don't turn anybody away if we think we can help them.
And she shared that with me. I was like, okay, so if this blows up, if this video blows up, are you going to tell me to turn it off? Because there's going to be a lot of people who still need help. And most of my audience, probably, more than 50% of my audience is veterans. You know, a lot of them have 100%, but even still, you were able to help me get an over 100%, like an additional compensation. And we want to talk about that too. So all y'all 100%ers, just know that there's other claims that you can file. And I want to do a quick story time too, because speaking of no matter how long they've been out or whatever, there's a gentleman that I was in basic training with a long time ago, back in 2002. And he actually hurt himself in basic. And then in AIT, he was, for those who don't know, that's your secondary school. He was basically put out. They just threw him out. He didn't even identify as a veteran for real, because the military didn't do him right. And she was still able to get him, even just start him with a percentage and it was quick, because I swear it was like maybe a couple of months. He's like, oh my goodness, I talked to Kristen, her team is amazing, and I already have whatever the percentage is that quick. So it was like, oh yeah, she's really doing big things. And even with me, I'm like, okay, you know, my situation was a little bit different, but to have that big gap of 20 years, I'm like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And I want to go right into what you talked about with those who are paying for attorney services for veteran claims. Can you touch on what you explained?
The claim sharks thing?
Yeah, the claim sharks thing.
Okay. So there's a big controversy right now. So if anybody who's worked, you know, and I'm not going to call them out, but what I will say is there are two bills before Congress right now. There's the GUARD Act and the PLUS Act, and they've been introduced. I think both of them have been introduced over the last 3 years, and they just haven't come to vote on the floor. But the GUARD Act is the one that protects VA-accredited attorneys and agents. So the law on the books right now makes it illegal to charge for helping veterans with their initial claims. So if it's a claim you've never claimed before or put in before, no one should be charging anyone for that. That's illegal. But there's no teeth to the law. So, okay, it's illegal, but if you do it, what's going to happen to you? The VA has sent cease and desist letters to several of these companies, and they are making money hand over fist. Some of them are charging 5 times the increase that they get you. So if you come to them at 0% and they get you 50%, you are basically paying them your monthly stipend from VA every month for 5 months. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's your money. So the VA accreditation, obviously I had to be an attorney, or they have claims agents who have to pass a test and a background check, but we don't charge for initial claims. And they restrict how much we can charge on the percentage, the contingency fee. So again, if you come with me, I'm never going to charge you for initial claims. I've had people come to me at 0 and leave me at 100, and they've never paid me a dime. And we still provide all the services. My services don't change based on the money you pay me. I look at all the claims in the same light and I argue and advocate zealously, no matter whether I'm getting paid or not. And most of the time, I don't even know if I'm getting paid. I just go for it. I just make my argument and run with it. But the claim sharks, I was telling Sheena before we started that I had a client who came to me who was with one of these claim sharks companies, and I won his appeal. I wrote it up. I argued it. I won his appeal, and I charged him $3,000, which was my fee, which was by law okay. However, this company he worked with before, out of the blue, sent him an invoice for $6,000, and they didn't do anything to win that claim for him. And we were both kind of perplexed as to how they were getting that information, because they shouldn't have gotten it. The guy only got $10,000 in back pay. I billed him 3. And these people did nothing and billed him 6. I mean, so even if I hadn't argued it, they were still going to bill him twice as much as I did under law. And so it didn't do anything. And so, and they basically crank up, they focus heavily on mental health claims, because they're usually the higher ones. You can get 50%, 70%. We look at everything. We also look at everything that, even if you come to me, like I think Sheena came to me, she already had a percentage, she already had a rating, but we go back and we look at what you were already rated as. And we look at those ratings to make sure that they're appropriate, because sometimes everybody's going to be shocked. VA lowballs you. So maybe you should have been rated at 30% based on your exam and your history, but they rated you at 10%. So we look at all of that, and we'll go back and fix it too. So I was telling her too. See, I got full of stories. So
no, I love it.
I had an older gentleman today who's 87, and got him to 100% because of his heart condition that they kept denying. And then I got him another exam, and it showed he should have been 100% just for his heart. And his wife came in today and was so grateful, because she said, now we don't have to sell the farm. And that just,
it was a lot of money that they got as a back pay, right?
It was. He got over 40 grand as back pay. And so, I mean, like, that just makes me, I mean, even if I don't get paid, it, just makes my heart swell, because you feel like you're doing something. And we really do this. My husband is my case manager, Ron, and he's 21 years Army retired as well. So we're here for the veterans. We both have been through this journey and understand the frustration, which is one of the big reasons why we do what we do. So if you see the GUARD Act or the PLUS Act, don't go with the PLUS Act. That one makes the claim sharks what they're doing legal, and they don't have to be. I mean, like, they're making it basically, you just put in an application for accreditation, you get it, but you don't have any background investigation. You don't have any kind of training. They just basically, they're getting with medical companies and getting them to write medical opinions and submitting stuff, which I think is kind of shady. Anyway.
No, I appreciate that, because, like I told you, I didn't even know that. And, a lot of people, if any of that went over your head, like, if there's been so many people that I tried to send to you, but someone else got to them first, and they said they had to pay. Oh, I just had to pay them 10 grand. Now they have money, right? So if for them paying 10 grand up front was nothing, whereas what you're saying with the initial claims, and I don't even want to say it, but you're not even necessarily getting paid for that, and you're getting paid for appeals, which we need to change that. But I'm just saying, in general, it's like people are paying $10,000 or more, lots of money, just to start the claims. Now, I was always a free first type of lady, right? So I like how we met. I was like, I've already put in all my claims. I'm gonna get 100%, or I'm gonna, do something mean. And so you were like, well, the VA is not playing fair right now, so we'll see. And of course, I didn't get it, and so then I came crawling back to you, like, please help me. And you, of course, just completely took it to the moon with the amount of help that you provided for me and for everyone that I referred to you. But just so people understand that these companies are taking advantage of you. So even if you're too lazy to do it yourself, her company will help you, like, basically do it all for you. That's really what you were doing. is and have the conversations with you, the things that you don't even know, is wrong with you. And even talking with Ron, he's like, so are you saying such and such? And I'm like, that is what I'm saying, because it's like specific words you have to say in order to, you may have terrible back problems, but we're prideful because we're soldiers and we're airmen and we're, we're in the military, and we don't say the right words. And so then we end up getting denied, or the VA just overlooks, some of that stuff. So just, you're not supposed to pay anything up front.
No,
So just no.
not at all. It's illegal. And and so here's the other thing. If you're looking for somebody to represent you, I would tell you to make sure that that person is VA accredited. And I can provide a website at some point that the national, I'm a member of the National Organization for Veterans Advocates. It's called NOVA. And we're comprised of VA accredited attorneys, claims agents, VSOs, law professors, law students, that sort of thing. But that group, all of them are accredited. So if you go to their website, and I can provide that, I think it's vetadvocates.org.
Okay.
If you go to their website, there's a member directory there. So all of those people, to be a member, you have to be VA accredited. So that's where you want to go if you're looking for representation. VSOs are great. They're really great for initial claims, but usually VSOs, and I'm talking like VFW, DAV, American Legion, that sort of thing, they're mostly volunteers, and they're not really full of attorneys and that sort of thing. What I like about, I love getting people on the front end before they've done anything, because we can just make your journey much easier. It's just easier to get in on the ground floor. But if you go to a VSO to start your stuff, it's free because they're volunteers. But a lot of times after you've gotten denied, because it's not unusual to be denied, that's actually more the norm. But if you get denied, the VSOs don't have necessarily the training or the knowledge to argue the law. And I keep up with the law. It's all I do. This is the only law that I practice. This is what I do. I feel like I live and breathe veterans law. But this is all we do. Yeah. And so, you need to, just pay attention to who you're getting to help you. I mean, the VSOs, I love them because they are good as a first step, but their argument kind of ends with, the veteran deserves it. I'm like, but I'm going to tell them why the veteran deserves it and why they have to grant it. And I think that's the difference, No, again, I'm not bashing VSOs or anybody else, but it's a different training. It's a higher level training.
No, and thank you for, even with me understanding it, I still didn't know how good the VFW was and DA. I've used DAV, and I'm like, well, they work right here in the VA. I didn't think that they would be as helpful, and they're not.
Yeah.
Just saying. I can say it. I know you probably don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. They're not.
Yeah.
And so, no, thank you for that, because that makes a huge difference, especially like with the denial. We have a segue into that question, but before that, I got a little story time, because I was actually denied for I'm allergic to dog tags. So I'm being transparent. My audience knows I'm transparent. And it was I couldn't get the smallpox shot because I have eczema. So allergic to the dog tags, couldn't get the smallpox. Like, this is documented, and I got denied. So that was when I put in my own claim. And so, of course, her and a wonderful team, sent me back to the doctor. And so the VA said, oh, oops, we never sent you to the doctor originally for your original claim. That was literally what the letter said. Oh, oops, we never sent you in the first place. Huh? Like, that's what it said from the VA, from the Veterans Affairs. I'm like, wow. So this is really just somebody overlooked something. And then, her team sent me back, and I got my percentage. Like, what?
That was called a duty to assist error. We get those frequently. We point out, because VA by law has a duty to assist veterans in substantiating their claims. So I make that argument on the daily. And I win most of them sometimes. And then sometimes VA just ignores everything I send. And so we do it again.
Right. And again, and again, and again. No,
exactly.
I love that. Even though your communication system is great. So what are some of the common reasons why veterans get denied?
So there's, I think I came up with 4, because you gave me a heads up. And I ran it by Ron too to make sure I was right. Because we do this all the time. I'm like, well, but one of the things, the biggest thing is not understanding the elements required to get VA disability compensation. I have veterans all the time that come in and like, well, I have diabetes now, and I have hypertension and sleep apnea. Well, and that's unfortunate. And I hate that for you. But we have to service connect it. Just because you have it now doesn't make it service connected. And if it's not service connected, you're not going to get your disability. So to start with, you have to have something happen in service. You have to have a current condition, and then we have to show a link between those two. So what I find often is people come like, oh, I want to put in all these claims. And I'm like, well, if they're initial claims, I don't get paid for them anyway. And if it's near and dear to your heart and you just feel like you have to put it in, we'll help you put it in. But I try to be more deliberate and efficient with everybody's claims and appeals, because your time is money and my time is money. The last thing anybody wants to do is run around to all these VA appointments that aren't going to come to fruition. You're not going to get anything. So I don't want to waste your time. Sometimes they won't even give you an exam because you didn't have anything in service to connect it for, and they're like, it's not even worthy of an exam. But I'm not going to send you to an exam that I know you're never going to win a rating for. But again, if it's near and dear to your heart and it's an initial claim, I'm like, sure, why not? If you want to go to that exam, that's all right. But so that's one of the biggest things, is that one. And then the other one is a lack of consistent care post-service. Like when you get out of the service, this is what I always say, you jack up your knee in service, they throw some Motrin at you, might do a little surgery, throw some more Motrin at you, tell you to, ice, was it rice, rest, ice, whatever. And then you just drive on. And so like, why you don't go to the doctor every day or every time your knee flares up, you put a brace on, you do the rice thing, you take the Motrin and you soldier on, to say. And so, nobody goes to the doctor for that stuff anymore. You go to the doctor for your sinuses and you don't talk about your knee. So then VA comes back and says, oh, well, your knee can't be that bad because you haven't seen a doctor in 5 years after service. You didn't see a doctor for 5 years after you got out of service. So it wasn't chronic. Well, but it was. You just didn't go to the doctor every day for it. So I hate that argument when they come back, when they deny for that reason. We can usually cure that with a statement where you say that you self-treated, you took the Motrin, you did the rice, all that kind of stuff. You put a brace on it. We can usually cure that. And sometimes that works, not always, but it should work, but it doesn't always. The third one is lack of documentation and service treatment records. We're all told, you're the pariah if you go on sick call in the military, oh, you're on sick call again. But that bites us in the butt on the other side of it, because, well, you didn't go to sick call and it's not in your records. Well, right. But the culture of the military is that you don't go to sick call.
Right.
Which is why I think that all veterans should, it should only be veterans and Veterans Affairs because
agreed.
Yes, you have to know that, so many times I want to argue, you don't understand military culture. But that's not really a good legal argument. So I can't usually use that one. And then the last reason that people get denied is missing exams, which is so easy to handle. Just go to your exam. Now, I realize sometimes people say, well, I didn't get notifications, and that happens frequently, and it does happen, but they only give you one chance to reschedule. And I mean one chance, and they are strict on that. And if you go for that rescheduling, they will take like twice as long to reschedule you as if you had just gone to the first appointment. Now, I had a situation with my own claim where I said, they asked me for my availability. I gave it to them, and I said, I'm out of town these 3 days. Don't you know? They scheduled me for the first of those 3 days. And I was like, I called back and I was like, I can't do that because I told you I'm out. So, and I said, I'm out these 3 days. So they made it the last of the 3 days. And I was like, seriously? And so, but this is for me. So, this is for me. So I was like, all right, fine, deny me, I'll appeal it. I'm working for myself, but it's frustrating. So, don't think that it doesn't happen to people like me too. I do this for a living and it still happens to me. So it's that missing the exams. And then I have people, I don't know, for whatever reason, they just blow it off. And that always breaks my heart because they're initial claims. And I'm like, well, now you're going to have to pay me. And all you have to do is show up to your exam. And if you had just gone under your initial claim, you wouldn't have to pay me. And I'm okay with that. But, so it's try to show up to those exams, folks.
So caring. And I actually was sent to a wrong address one time, and it still took them forever and a day. I'm like looking all in the window, and it's like this building has been leased. I was like, I know this can't be right. Yeah, it was so crazy. And they were just like, I'm on the phone on hold. I'm like, this is literally not my fault. And it took forever to get that appointment. Yes. It was probably a month or more later. So I feel you on that. I'm gonna go a little bit to, we have Ivan on the line, and a blessing. Has there been any legislation on burn pit compensation for veterans? I submitted paper for that years ago and still nothing's come of it. Great question.
Okay, so that is the PACT Act that you've been hearing about. So they did do that. So what they did, everybody signed up for that burn pit registry, which I think is what he's probably talking about.
Yeah.
So if you sign up for the burn pit registration, VA needs to work on their messaging. Let me just say. So you sign up for the burn pit legislation or the registry, and that was actually trying to think of a way to say this. It was kind of like a prelude to the research for burn pits, for the burn pit exposure. VA was looking to see how many veterans they had, because it's all about numbers. So if we pass this legislation, what is this going to cost us? So they had everybody sign up for the burn pit registration so they could get a number of how many people were going to file claims. Does that make sense?
So we didn't get any extra money. There's no money attached to it.
No, because and I still have clients coming to me now. And they're like, well, should I sign up for the burn pit registration? And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, no, it's over. So I mean, you can still sign up for it, but it was really the prelude to their research. So that was the prelude to the research to develop and sign into law the PACT Act on August 10th, 22. So but the good thing, but I will say there is good news about the PACT Act. It's not just a finite law. It doesn't just end. So like they did the whole Blue Water Navy, I don't know if anybody remembers that. It was for Agent Orange. So for the Navy guys who were within 12 nautical miles of Vietnam and some other places, they would grant them the Agent Orange exposure presumptively. So that was really great. And that was a finite law. The PACT Act, they have left open-ended. So because of the burn pit registry, it affects so many veterans. So what they've done is they've said, okay, these are the presumptive conditions that we're releasing right now on August 10th, 22. But now we're going to leave the door open to continue research because they don't really know all of the effects of these exposures.
I see.
And so they left it open-ended so they could add presumptive conditions. And actually, January 10th of this year, they added 3 leukemias. And I actually just had my first leukemia win from that. Somebody who's been fighting it for years and got 60% off his leukemia because of his burn pit exposure. So, and he was very excited. The only thing that I could, I couldn't get him anything before January 10th because that's when they made it presumptive. But the PACT Act leaves it open-ended for them to continue to add conditions as they finish the research and determine what's going on. So, so for Ivan who hasn't heard anything, you're gonna need to file a claim, man. Come to me, I'll take care of you.
Right. I think Ivan's at 100%, but he might be able to get the extra stuff that we was talking about.
Extra stuff, exactly. Maybe.
Yes. So you kind of touched on it, but I just for the good of the group, what's the difference between a claim, appeal, initial claim, appeal? Like, are those the hard 2 ways?
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking that right.
Right. Yeah. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So the claims are like your initial claim. So I call claims the initial claims, the ones you've never done before. If you've never filed a claim, well, it's definitely initial. But if you've never claimed that condition, that's initial claim. I can never sign that form for you. Only the veteran can sign that form. So those are initial claims. That's where you start. Once they've been processed through VA, maybe you had exams, maybe you didn't, maybe you just got denied. But they'll go through, they process it, they make decisions, you get denials, you get grants, whatever you get. An appeal then, this is where you might want to get representation. And I suggest you get representation because as Sheena and I were just talking, it's really hard to advocate for yourself. I suck at advocating for myself. I was telling her I struggled after I submitted things for myself and then I got the denial. I was like, why did I do that? Because I wouldn't have done that for my clients. I would have done it because you're very emotional about your own stuff. And so it's really hard to separate your emotions from your situation to do the right thing, the objective thing that you need to do to win. So, this is the hard part, is doing the appeals. The appeals need to be on specific forms and they have specific requirements. So once you've been denied, you're in appeals mode because you can never, if you have claimed something and been denied, it doesn't matter if it was 20 years ago, you're going to appeal it because you've already claimed it and you've been denied it. So the appeals have specific forms that are required. There are specific requirements for each one of those appeals or forms. There's the higher level review, which you can do after the first decision. And that's usually just kind of like, hey, I want somebody like a supervisor to look at that again because I think you got it wrong. I usually submit arguments on that. Some people just submit it again and say, hey, look again. And usually you don't win those because, it's all about getting it off your desk at VA, right? So, oh yeah, I looked at it, same, it's gone, you got denied again. And then your next appeal option is a supplemental claim. And that one requires, so you use that one within a year of your decision, your denial, and the HLR has to be, the higher level review has to be done within a year of your denial. And then the supplemental claim can be done within a year, or it can be done if you're outside your year. But when you submit a supplemental claim, you have to submit new and relevant evidence. And this
Oh,
is new and relevant evidence is the bane of my existence. So usually they want something that they haven't considered before. And so many times I want to say, well, it was in the record, but you didn't consider it because you ignored it. But that's not to them, that's new and relevant because it was already in the record. And to me, I find that very frustrating. And sometimes I get a little snarky on my appeals.
good.
I mean,
Someone got to do it.
I mean, sometimes I'm just having a day and I'm just like, look, just do the right thing. Y'all know what you're supposed to do. You ignored this. So this is new and relevant because you didn't consider it before. So
Ooh, I like
I've
that.
actually won a time or two with that. I was like, oh, I was snappy and they got after it.
Looking back
So
at your stuff like, that's me.
I know, right? I was like, I was thinking surely when I sent it out, it was gonna be denied again. But I was like, ooh, maybe I scared them.
Yes,
So I
good.
mean, but so that's the supplemental claims lane. And then you can also go appeal to the BVA, which is the Board of Veterans Appeals. I don't go there that often. That is the last administrative appeal you have within VA. So if you go beyond BVA, you have to go to, then you're out of the agency and you're at the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. We call it CAVC, CAVIC. And that's actually, I think, I don't know how many judges. I want to say it's 9 or 10 judges, justices sit on that. And those are the big things. And then if you don't win there, you can go to the federal circuit. And if you don't win there, you can go to the Supreme Court. We just had one last year, or actually just a couple, like in March. Was it Abrego? I think we didn't do very well on that, but it was about reasonable doubt for veterans. But there's, you have options, and the thing I love about this law is that you can keep biting at that apple until you get the answer you want, or until they just totally shut you down. So sometimes we get in here and I feel like I'm doing the string thing and trying to link things, secondary to this and secondary to that, and sometimes we get really creative, and my gosh, sometimes it works. So
I was gonna say, so like with those, do you have some people that are like, I want to take this all the way to the Supreme Court, and you're like, it's for your pinky, like relax.
right.
Like, do you ever kind of stop them at that level? Like, this is not Supreme Court worthy.
Yeah, I do. So I don't do the Supreme Court work. I try to stay at the agency of original jurisdiction. We call it the AOJ, which is the VA, with just doing the higher level review supplemental claims. The only time I go to BVA is when I'm making a legal argument. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, when they're representing themselves, think that, well, I lost, I got my first denial, I'm going to the BVA. Okay, well, here's the thing. You're clogging up BVA, their docket, and they have such a backlog. One of the reasons I don't go to BVA that often is because they have 3 lanes of appeal at BVA. You have the direct review, which means you submit no new evidence. You just fill out the form and submit it, and they're supposed to review your records and then look it over and say, okay, yeah, VA made a mistake, and we're going to grant it, or VA made a mistake and we're going to remand it back, and they have to redo it. I hate when they do that. Or you do the evidence lane, which allows you to submit evidence. Or you can do the hearing lane, which takes so much longer. The reason I don't do them, seriously, is because even the direct review lane is supposed to be much quicker. It's like 2 years. And then if you do the evidence lane, it's like 3 years. And if you do the hearing lane, it takes you 2 or 3 years to get the hearing scheduled. And then you have to wait another year to 18 months to get your decision.
But all that time is back pay accumulating.
It is accumulating. It is. And I do it because, like, again, sometimes I used to not send people to BVA. I really try to avoid it. But sometimes when the arguments are just really legal, the AOJ, they don't want to touch it because they're not lawyers. They're just people. They're government workers. They don't want to do it. And so, and I'm quoting all this law and this like going over their heads. So, when I send them to BVA, just about everybody I've sent to BVA so far, I've won.
You're the best. Duh.
Hey. And so there was a guy who was in, I can't remember, it was like Panama. It wasn't it was something like that. Anyway, he was in a foreign country, one of those island countries, and I honestly can't remember. But he got kidnapped, and it was like in the 60s. He got kidnapped. He was in the Navy, and he got off the ship on leave or whatever. He got kidnapped. And the Navy police, whatever they are, I'm sorry, I was Army. So the Army CID, whatever, so those people came out and basically rescued him and took him back to the ship. And of course, this was in the 60s. So, and of course, VA's like, well, there's no record of it. There's no record of the incident, yada, yada. Because we were arguing PTSD. he actually had already, and I hated these. I didn't want to do this, but I was just starting out my practice, and I'm like, I'll take any case. And so, I was like, well, I didn't put it there, but anyway, I took him to the BVA. We did the hearing, and I did my research, and my argument was that the Navy, police, whatever, they purged their records after 5 years. So my
Oh,
argument to the veterans law judge was, well, there's no evidence there because the government destroyed it. So you can't hold him accountable for evidence that the government destroyed as a matter of practice. We won. And they
wow.
quoted my finding of the Navy, and I had some other stuff in there too, some markers and that sort of thing. But I was actually like, they bought that. So
It is true.
it is true. And so, I mean, like, I was like, hey, I persuaded them with that. So you don't always, when we talk about having stuff in your service treatment records, just like my elbow in Desert Storm, I wrote a statement and I got a buddy statement from somebody who saw me with my arm in a sling. I was like, look, nobody was humping around with the filing cabinet on their back.
Nobody.
The medics threw some Motrin at you and off we go because we were jumping sites. So,
Right.
again, you have to be in the military to understand the culture and what goes on.
It makes a
So
huge difference. No, that
it
is
does.
No, that's perfect. And thank you. Like as you were talking, I'm like, oh my God, I got to ask about this too. Like we're
Yep.
gonna go so off script, and then we got a couple of questions in
That's
the
fine.
audience. So is it
Okay.
Shana said, careful with all the coming back and forth too. I've seen vets get is it severed, reduced
Severed.
because VA found where they granted in error.
Yes, that is
Wow.
absolutely true. Yes, and especially lately, they're doing a whole lot of this. So we call that a clear and unmistakable error. I call it a Q because it's easier to say than clear and unmistakable error. But the criteria for a Q on our side for the veteran is different than the criteria for a Q on the VA side. I find that when the VA does the Q, they will just reduce or sever, and they won't request back pay, which is great. I mean, they won't request a recoupment, which is great because it was their error. But with the reductions and stuff, I always warn my clients who want to get an increase. They're like, my knee's jacked up. I'm at 30%. I should be higher. And I'm like, I get it, but 30% is a really good rating for a knee.
Right.
And I'm like, you just need to leave it alone. I just don't touch it because
Don't
you
do-
always risk reduction
Right.
if you go for an increase. So there's that rule that if you've been rated for condition for 5 years or you're over 55, that they shouldn't be able to reduce you or sever you
5 years.
unless you open the door. So if you open the door with a claim for increase, you've opened that door and you're just open. They can take it from you.
For that one thing though, right? So if
That one thing, yes.
Okay, so if I go there for my shins, but my
Yes.
knees are already claimed, are they gonna be like, well, it doesn't look like her knee is hurting, even though she's here for a shin?
Well, they might do that because the shins and knees are all on the same DBQ, the disability benefits questionnaire. Yeah. So when we are doing, yeah, exactly. So
Oh my God, I need to
don't
chill.
touch it.
Right.
Don't touch it. So,
Oh.
and that's what we warn our clients. And I have some people are like, no, I got to get a higher rate. And I'm like, but you're like really high where you are and you should just leave it be because they can always reduce you. And usually we try to find other ways to get you a higher rating rather than going after the thing that they might reduce you on. Now, I've seen some people who definitely should get an increase. We had a guy recently that we didn't know had a heart attack in the last month. And so we got him a heart rating, but it was like 10%. Well, now he had a heart attack and now he's got a note from his doctor. He can't walk more than 60 feet. So he should be rated like at least 60%, if not 100% for his heart. So we're going back after that. He's not going to get reduced because he has a note from his doctor. He can't walk that far. And that's one of the criteria on the rating schedule for a higher rating for the heart. So that I'm not worried about, but you do have to be very, very careful. We are always very careful with our clients about doing increases. And I always warn them. And when they go ahead, I'm kind of like, okay, I'll sign it, but I don't like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was actually one of my questions because one of my friends, she was like, I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to mess with it. And I didn't know. So what about permanent and total? What the heck is that? If you're permanent and total, leave me alone.
If you're permanent and total, yes, if you're permanent and total, that means you're 100%. Just leave it alone. just leave it alone. Now, the only thing, so I see somebody said something about compensation beyond 100%. I think it was Melanie.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go in order. I'm going to go in order.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're 100%, you're permanent total, just don't touch it. Just don't touch it. If you're, the things that you can get beyond 100%, that's the only time that you would touch something when you're 100% and permanent and total. But those are things for like housebound or loss of use, like if you can't walk, if you can't use your legs, or your arm goes numb and you can't use it, that sort of thing. So those are the special monthly compensations. So like loss of use is SMCK. And that's loss of use, either, like I said, of a limb or an appendage or of a creative organ. So if you have ED, or female sexual arousal disorder. Nobody wants to talk about it, but you can get, I think it's like an extra 100, I think it just went up. It's like $132 and some change extra every month on top of your 100%. So they'll rate you at 0% for that condition, FSAD or ED, and then you get the special monthly compensation. So I know it's a 0 rating and it doesn't bump up your rating, but you get extra money for it no matter what your rating is.
And we're here for the money. I mean, let's just be real. We're here for the money. So
Exactly.
the percentages, whatever. But like you said, so okay, let me just, since we got there. So if I had 50%, but then they rated me at 0 for female sexual arousal disorder,
right?
It doesn't take up my percentage, but I just get 50% compensation plus that extra 100 and whatever.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how it works.
Okay.
Yes.
That I did not know. Okay. I was
You could be 10% and then get the special monthly compensation. I mean, like, I don't really know how you'd be 10% and get a special monthly compensation.
Right.
I guess it could happen. I mean, it's VA. Anything can happen, folks.
Yeah, I can see technically it can happen.
Yeah.
So, okay, got it. So Ivan has another great question. As it pertains to sleep apnea, I've seen some proposals to change the way the VA rates those with it who may have a machine versus those who don't. Basically, they're looking to decrease the compensation. Any update to that? Also, I will be giving you a call. Of course we will.
Awesome. Yes, so the sleep apnea, that is true. They're looking at changing the rating schedule, and it's not advantageous for the veterans. It's more in VA's favor. And so they just did that with GERD. If anybody was paying attention, May 19th of 24, they changed the rating schedule for GERD. So it used to be, if you had like reflux and substernal pain or arm pain and some other symptoms, you get like, 30, you get 10%. And if it was really bad, you get 50%. Well, now they've changed it because it was analogous to hiatal hernia, which is like a little pocket you got at the bottom of your esophagus. I know way more about medical things than I ever thought I'd know.
I'm like, wow.
I mean, because you have to be able to do this stuff, but I feel like I went to med school and law school. So but they did hiatal hernia was the analogous rating. And then honestly, my personal feelings, we keep it on the down low here on the live thing. But I think that they looked at the top 3 ratings that veterans got and they said, how can we reduce these? Because those are the big payers, and it was GERD, it was sleep apnea, and tinnitus. And so they've hit up GERD. So now if you have GERD, the only way you're going to get any kind of compensable rating, like beyond 0, is to have esophageal stricture, which is the restrictive esophagus, and which is hard to swallow kind of stuff. That's like 10%. So when you get GERD now, everybody I've gotten GERD lately gets like 0%.
Wow.
Because it's under the new thing. But if you applied for it under the law and continued, did your continuous pursuit of your claim for GERD. So if you applied for it before May 19th, 2024, and you've been continuously pursuing that claim till now, they should rate you under the old criteria, not the new. Because the change in law for GERD, the change in law is not supposed to be meant to penalize you. It's, you're supposed to have the best, the most. There's another law, I can't remember it off the top of my head, that tells you that you're supposed to get the better of the two, whatever is more beneficial to the veteran. You get the higher of the two. But then, so sleep apnea, what was asked is they're looking at changing that. So what usually happens in admin law is these agencies, they propose a rule, they wait for comments. It's called the rule, the notice and comment period. So
she's an encyclopedia. You hear? She's an encyclopedia. She's like, oh yeah.
I'm like, law school 101. So yeah, so they put out notice and comment period. They put out the notice what they're proposing to do. They wait for everybody who's a party, to make comments, and even individuals can make comments. I think that law sucks. I mean, usually you should go with something a little bit more substantive than that. But if you tell them why it sucks and what they should do instead, they'll do the notice and comment section. That's usually open for like, I can't remember, it's like 60 to 90 days. Once they get all those in there, they process them all, and then they issue, we got this comment, this is why we ignored it. We got this comment, this is why we ignored it. And so ultimately, they're like, okay, we tweaked this a little bit because of this comment, and then they issue the final rule. So they have proposed the sleep apnea change. And it is less advantageous for the veteran with the new, just kind of like the GERD thing. Right now, if you have a CPAP or any device, you can get 50%. If you have sleep apnea and service connected, you get 50%. If you don't have a device, depending on how bad your sleep apnea is, you could get 10 or 30. I don't think I've ever seen anybody get 0, but it's always possible. So what they're proposing to do is if you have a CPAP, now you get 10 instead of 50. And I haven't seen what the other stuff is. I mean, I just, I don't know if you have to be unconscious or what to get 50% for sleep apnea now, but they're changing it. And here's the thing though, we never know when. When we knew the GERD thing was coming, and it was every time I went to a conference, we were waiting, what's going on with GERD? We don't know. And then bam, it dropped. They're like, I think we had like a 2-week notice that it was coming. So I was like, hurry up, get everybody's claiming for GERD.
Right.
And so we had like a 2-week notice. So I feel like the sleep apnea will be similar. The Nova group that I'm in, is very good. They're on top of it. They represent us advocates on the Hill. So we kind of have a feeling, our executive director meets with the congressmen and stuff and keeps her finger on the pulse of the legislation that affects us and what's changing. But the other one that they're looking to change too is tinnitus. And I have feelings about that because tinnitus, I feel legally, and I'm talking outside of my head here, I feel legally that they should not be able to change tinnitus because there is a case called Fountain v. McDonald. I don't even remember what year, it was like 2009, that said that tinnitus is not caused, it doesn't have to be caused by acoustic trauma. It is an organic disease of the nervous system. So it always irritates me when I get these CMP exams and medical opinions back where the audiologist said, well, they had no acoustic trauma. Well, you don't need to have acoustic trauma. Fountain v. McDonald said you don't. And I think for them, and what I understand is the way they wanted to change the rating schedule is to be eligible for it, you had to have acoustic trauma. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that without changing that court case. So you have to overturn that court case because otherwise the law says you can't. That's just my opinion.
So with that though, with you knowing that, like, and that's a part of the argument, do they just say we don't care, or like what? I mean, like, you can't just deny it, like,
Well, so this is where my snark comes in.
Okay.
So when I appeal these, when the CMP examiner comes back and says, well, this is, they have to have acoustic trauma. Well, then I go back and say, well, obviously the VA examiner was not up to date on the case law that affects the, whatever, right? And and then you say, well, so maybe you need to send this to an examiner who actually understands the law and that it's an organic disease of the nervous system, according to Fountain v. McDonald. Ta-da.
So, okay, yes. And that does that usually work?
Yes, usually, yes, when we get those. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Like, you can't just just like with the oops, we forgot to send you to the doctor. Like, what are y'all talking about? And that
right. Yeah.
It's an emotional thing. That's why I know you're probably like punching air sometimes, like, what are they doing? And you got such passion, that's obvious. So I just appreciate everything you do.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Melanie says, can you talk about compensation beyond the 100%? They took the caretaking program him overnight.
Maybe away from him overnight.
Oh, okay. Then told me the request for ad compensation and had been given me the Melanie's extremely, I know she's probably like really, really trying to get this message out. So sorry, Melanie, but
okay.
I think you understand the question for her dad.
I do. I understand the question. Okay, so compensation beyond 100%. That's what we were talking about, the special monthly compensation. You get housebound, aid and attendance. And there's all kinds of, to get aid and attendance, you have to be 100%. Usually they say you have to be 100% for one condition. I don't know a whole lot of people that are 100% for one condition, seriously. So I'm kind of like, really? But I've seen people get it. The problem with special monthly compensation, and I will be honest here, I am not the special monthly compensation guru. That stuff is confusing.
Yeah.
And so
I was reading and I'm like, never mind.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants special monthly compensation and they come to me, I'm like, and usually I'll say, I have someone better to help you because I mean, there are people in Nova that are fabulous and they like live and breathe special monthly compensation. And there's like R and S and T and L1 and L2.
Yes,
and all this stuff.
literally.
And I'm like, what? Yeah, exactly. But what I do understand about it is that like with the special monthly with SMCK, loss of creative organ, loss of use of limb or whatever, when you get rated for the condition that gets you that, I'm just going to use that one because it's really easy. So like if you get rated for ED at your 0%, VA is supposed to automatically consider you for that special monthly compensation. They're automatically supposed to, it's triggered that they you don't put in for it. So now
Oh,
I've had clients who have been rated 0% for ED. I had one who was rated 0% for ED back in 2016. They never gave him the SMCK. So I did a Q, the clear and unmistakable error, which is a very specific and rare error, I will say, because you can only argue it when you have to look at that snapshot in time. So this is the evidence on record at the time they made the decision, and factually they made the wrong one. If it's just a difference of opinion, like, well, that examiner didn't know what they're talking about, it's not a Q. It has to be factually an error. So
gotcha.
with the evidence on record. And so like this guy, he was rated for it. He was given it by law. He was entitled to the SMCK. It was a fairly easy Q. So we won his SMCK all the way back to 2016.
He got back pay. Look, I'm always like,
He did. He did. He got like 10 grand, girl.
That is beautiful. That is, and that you didn't even know was coming.
No, exactly. So,
Wow.
those kinds of things. So with the extra over 100%. So talking about I think she's probably talking about the caregiver program. They just overhauled that last year, and it was a lot of veterans that were given the caregiving program because they were like 100% PTSD. A lot of OIF folks and stuff like that had that special monthly compensation and the caregiving program, and they just took it away from them.
Wow.
And I don't know all the specifics of why they just took it away from them, but it's another one of those things where when they evaluate the veteran, that they should consider the special monthly compensation they might be considered for, or they might be eligible
Oh,
for.
I see.
So I just had somebody recently who he was 100%. And we were going after aid and attendance because his wife had to take care of him. She can't leave him alone. He's got dementia, Agent Orange, all this, with Agent Orange exposure and that sort of thing. And she couldn't leave him alone, and she needed help. And we kept trying to get aid and attendance. And that's when I learned the hard way, because I don't know it all. But I always tell the clients, if you give me a chance, I'm human and I'll work with you and I'll try to do my best.
You've been doing great so far. You know everything that everyone's been asking.
Well, so we put in for her. I was like, I just need to get him a new exam, and he had just had some falls and stuff because he had his legs were neuropathy and all that stuff from the diabetes, and so we put him in for the increase, and they did the exam, and that got him a caregiver program. So he got housebound, and they put him, but they had to do the caregiver program through VHA, which is the healthcare side, not VBA.
Oh, I see.
So if you go to the people in the VHA side, I think they can help you better with the caregiver program than VBA, the benefits side, which is what I work on. That was what I took away from that. But they are supposed to, like she was saying about her dad, if you could get him another exam in some way, or get somebody to say he can't take care of himself and he needs the care, that's how that gets going. I don't know what VHA's process is because I don't do that side at all. I'm kind of like a VHA dummy.
No.
But
And it's so complicated because as you said that, I was thinking about asking you about other things with the VA, but I'm like, yeah, that's outside of like technically the benefit side. So yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and I focus solely on the benefits side. So I have like the horse blinders on about I'm the VBA. I'm just VBA.
Be an expert in your field.
Exactly. I'm like, you do one thing good. So here I am on the benefit side.
Very, very great. No, I appreciate that. I hope that answered your question, Melanie. That was maybe 10 minutes ago, so maybe hopefully she didn't jump off.
She's still here, yeah.
But if you're still here, Melanie, let me know if that made sense, and make sure y'all drop where you are located in the chat and show her some love because this has been amazing so far. I'm learning, and I talk to her pretty regularly.
She does.
Yeah, for real. So Grover says, if I'm P&T, should I go through with the HLR to discuss entitlement to an earlier effective date for sleep apnea or leave it alone?
Well, it depends if your HLR would get you an earlier effective date for your 100%. So I look at those two when we have clients come through and they get, we'll get them like 90% and then you need like another 80% to get to 100, which is crazy. Right.
It is crazy.
VA math, that's a whole other show. So anyway, when we look at that, so we'll have clients who get to 100%, maybe they got there on initial claims, we got whatever. And then I have claims pending, I have appeals pending for them. My question to Ron is always, well, would it make the 100% effective date earlier? The 100% earlier? Because if you just get an earlier effective date and it doesn't change your 100%, what's the point?
Okay, because that was even for me when you mentioned it to me. I was like, I don't really understand. I'm scared to ask. And that's a Sheena thing. So I should have asked, but now it's got answered anyway. So basically, it takes the amount that you would have been getting further back, and that's where the back pay.
Right.
Always about the back pay.
It's always about the back pay. Yeah, I mean, and that's the
Right.
thing. I mean, like, yeah, you could win, but do you want to win or do you want more money? I want more money. I
More
mean,
money. It's all
I
about
don't
the
need to be
money.
right. I just need more money. So I'm just saying, I'm just saying. So, if it does, so if you think that your earlier effective date would make your 100% earlier, then yes, I would go through with it. But unfortunately, when you do an HLR, you don't always get a grant. So we talked about duty to assist errors before, where the VA says, oh yeah, we made a mistake. Unfortunately, a lot of HLRs result in duty to assist errors, which require them to usually ask for a new exam, which always risks reduction. If you're asking for an earlier effective date, they shouldn't do any of that. Also, if you're within 30 days of your decision, you can do what's called a CAR, which is a claims accuracy request. That if you submit it within 30 days, they're supposed to process it right away. There for a while, it was taking them like 3 months. I'm like, that's not really speedy. I mean, you're telling me I got 30 days and then you take 3 months. But
Right.
lately, we've put them in like on Monday and we've had a decision on Wednesday.
Wow.
Grants. So that's kind of a two-part answer to Grover. I mean, like, if you're going to get more money for that effective date, then absolutely I would do it. And, if they start telling you got to go for exams, don't do it. Back out, withdraw. Just withdraw.
I see. Yeah, sometimes don't mess with it. That's like the moral of the story. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Grover. So Ivan is back. He says, so for those of us with these conditions that may change and have had them for many years with that rating, are we grandfathered in?
Yes. Yeah. So if you've been rated for over 5 years or you're over 55, they should not touch your individual ratings, which obviously affects your overall. But if you open that door, like I said, with a request for increase, if you're not 100%, you do an increase, I wouldn't do it. I mean, because you're opening the door for them to reevaluate you. I mean, now, if you had to have knee replacement, you were rated 10% for your knee, and then you've had to have a knee replacement. Well, then I'd go for it, especially if you're not 100%, go for the increase. But, if you just have to know whether it's that bad, has it gotten that much worse?
So, okay, I'm going to do a story time for me because I got a question.
Okay.
So Melanie did say thank you. That did help.
Okay, good.
All right. So for me, for those who don't know, I have hypersomnolence, which is the cousin of narcolepsy. Basically, fall asleep very, very fast. And that was discovered during my not VA sleep test. Because, sleep test at the VA is overnight, but I did the day and the night test. And so they rated my hypersomnolence under PTSD. And so my sleep doctor was like, no, it's not under PTSD. But it was combined with all the other things with my PTSD. And so I was kind of like, should I pluck that out, separate it? Because I feel like I get care for it. I get my medication for it. This is just me, Sheena, being transparent as always. But I feel like it needs to be on its own 2 feet, so to speak, as a separate thing. And it doesn't really exist. Nobody knows. People don't even know what narcolepsy is. Like, really, like, let alone hypersomnolence is not often, talked about. So in your opinion, and I probably won't mess with it, but I'm just saying, in your opinion, with me being 100% over, is it like a good idea to okay, there she goes.
No.
She said
no, and it's not, and I'll tell you why. Because VA disagrees with you plucking it out and making it separate, because they group it all under mental health. So we've had people, it's a thing. So here's the thing: people put in for sleep disorder and sleep apnea, and according to VA, those are 2 separate things. So sleep disorder is a symptom of a mental health condition. Sleep apnea is an airway issue, like a physiological airway issue. So they're very different. And something else that folks don't know, and I also learned this the hard way. I'm still learning too, folks. But I learned this a few years ago, so I'm all over it now. So if you are rated for sleep apnea and you're rated for asthma, they will combine them. So I had somebody who was rated 30% for asthma, and then he got 50% for sleep apnea, and he just got 50%, and they took away his asthma, and they said his sleep apnea was with asthma, and I was like, what happened? Like, what? And so then I did a deep dive. I mean, it's hidden in the 38 CFR somewhere, that you can't be rated for both of those. They have to be combined because it's a restrictive airway, this kind of thing, with the sleep apnea. And so they always combine asthma and sleep apnea. So you'll never find anybody who's rated for those separately. They always combine them. And the same thing with hypersomnolence and sleep disorder. They falls under a mental health condition. And the other thing, I have people all the time that are rated for anxiety, let's say 50%. And then they'll say, well, I have PTSD too. My therapist said I have PTSD. Well, I hate that. But, you know, they want to go back and get rated for PTSD too. You can only be rated for one mental health condition under VA because they group all of them under the same category. So whether it's anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar, all that stuff.
MST, the people need to know
MST.
too, MST as well.
All of those are listed under the same mental health rating schedule. And so you'll never get separate ratings for depression, anxiety, MST, anything like that. It's all the same. So your hyposomnolence was grouped under there because that's where it falls, because they consider it a symptom, not a condition in its own right.
How do we change it? How do we go? What court steps do I need to stand? Because honestly, like for real, because you know, you reflect back to when did this start? When did I feel like this happened?
Right.
And everybody knows that we're in these old barracks, right? We're in these old barracks. And I remember when I was in warrant officer basic course, and they literally had a sign on the door that said, "Do not sweep." And you know, when you're in any type of training, that's all you do. You're cleaning. And so we're sweeping, and it said asbestos. And so I'm like, I don't know if all the different symptoms of asbestos, but it said do not sweep asbestos. And we were like, we need to take a picture for this. We need to take a picture of this just in case we ever have to file a claim. And of course, lo and behold, here we are. And that's when I first noticed that I started having the sleep problem. So to me, that is not a mental condition.
Right.
I'm gonna leave it alone, but I'm just saying, like, how we change that?
Yeah, I would leave it alone. And I don't know how you change it.
I'm gonna ask ChatGPT how we got to change it, because I need to know. But thank you for explaining that. It makes a huge difference. For those who were trying to do something that's like similar but different, that's the answer. So with VHA, you mentioned that earlier. Talk to the social worker.
Yes, that's exactly what the other person did. Is they started with VHA with the social worker, and that's how they got their caregiver stuff.
Okay, good deal. So Ivan asked, combat related special compensation, CRSC provides tax-free monthly payments to eligible retired veterans with combat related injuries. I remember that.
Yes,
that's more on the military side, right? It's kind of like you got to get it.
Yes, you have to apply to DOD for that. And honestly, I have looked into that. We had somebody come to us to do that, and I am here to tell you, I do not see how that benefits you. If you're retired, you're retired. I guess it's the tax-free part. But I helped somebody do it. So we helped somebody do it. We had to look up all the regulations. I only did it once, but it's a DOD thing, and I honestly don't understand it. And if you really want to do that, I can refer you to somebody who works on that stuff. And I'll tell you, I don't know.
And I will say, well, okay, so that helps me too, because I think I might have asked you before, and you were like, I don't do that. But I appreciate that, because my situation was so complicated. I actually technically medically retired, but I was supposed to medically retire with compensation. I didn't. It was during COVID, blah, 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 blah. So with that, someone told me along the way that you have 10 years to go back and try to reclaim that. And so that person that you were going to refer, I need that person too, just to see, because that whole medical retirement thing is a trip.
Yes.
And I was told because of COVID, I literally got screwed over. So, I'm not trying to it was a big deal. It was a big situation.
No, I hear you. I'm thinking it was the guy that I was going to refer is Thomas Ruffneen, and he's with citizensoldierlaw.com. He handles he's Thomas Ruffneen. Ruff and then Neen.
Oh, okay.
And and citizensoldierlaw.com. He handles, like I do VA stuff, he does DOD stuff.
Yes. We need him.
We do. I know people start asking me questions. I'm like, ooh, let me just push you off to Thomas.
I appreciate that, because that was a rough thing for me. So I'm sure other people could probably sympathize. So Grover says, yes, 2012. I see them in May. What were we talking about?
2012. Okay, his earlier effective date for HLR. So yes, if it's going to get you your 100% back to 2012, heck yeah, go.
Hey, Grover's my friend. Hey, Grover, what's up?
Dinner on Grover.
Right. I was say, drinks on you, dinner on you. Cool.
Exactly.
So Marsha says, no problem. I worked at the VA. Okay, in Pennsylvania. Okay. I love it. I had so many questions, okay, that I wrote down, and we still haven't covered our other questions, and we're an hour in. But this is so
Oh,
great. I
are
really,
we?
really, yeah.
Wow,
See,
let's
so
go.
much fun. So much fun.
Yes.
So as far as the appointments, going back to that, now I know you said it just depends on how the things fall and whether the VA is doing what they're supposed to do. But do you feel like there's maybe a minimum amount of appointments where there's no way they can deny me if I've gone to 5 appointments about water on the knee? You know, like that type of thing.
So I will say the only thing I will guarantee about VA is that they are consistently inconsistent.
Okay,
I won't guarantee anything about them. Every time I think I got it down what they're doing, they don't do it. So
I got you.
I could submit 5 appeals, same 5 appeals on the same time, on the same day, about the same thing, and get 5 different results, completely different results. So it makes it's kind of like your target is constantly moving. So,
Okay.
sometimes I have an argument for this, sometimes but here's the thing. I don't usually recommend independent medical opinions. And I know a lot of barracks lawyers out there are like, get an independent medical opinion. The problem with those, I'll put a caveat out there. Beware of independent medical opinions. I had a client come to me from one of those claim sharks, and I told you that they focus on mental health. And the guy was rated at, I want to say 50%. And he was already rated 50% for PTSD, but the claim shark was like, no, you should be 100. So because they worked with a medical company, they got him a medical opinion. And I read this medical opinion, and this dude should have been institutionalized. He was homicidal. He was suicidal. I'm like, how do you even hold down a job?
Wow.
He was not those things. And as an attorney, as a VA-accredited attorney who has to follow ethical rules and all that stuff just for my profession, I actually thought about dropping him because I didn't want my name anywhere associated with that. Because he lost all credibility, in my opinion, he lost all credibility with the VA on that claim. And so when he came to us, I was like, let's just forget about this because I want to get as far away from that as possible. There was no way that he was, I mean, seriously, he couldn't have been walking around. And basically VA kind of called that out. They're like, his exam with the VA examiner was the 50%. And this other one, like, how is he even functioning and living a life? And they're like, it's not credible at all. And I agree. And I would, like I said, I was like, ooh, I don't know that I want to I don't want to go after that at all. So we convinced him to just move away from that. But that's what those claim sharks do. They go after the mental health stuff because that's where the money's at. You get the highest ratings. And they come up with these terrible independent medical opinions. They're getting people who aren't practicing medicine, but they're licensed to, and they just sit there and write up these ridiculous opinions, if you ask me. So that being said, I do use independent medical opinions sometimes.
Okay.
But you have to use them strategically. So I always tell my clients there's a clause in my engagement agreement about costs and expenses. And so the client always has to pay for those up front. And mine that I use, I have somebody who does them for $650 a condition and somebody who does them for $1,500 a condition. Depends on the complexity of it, right? So if I'm going for a mental health, I'll go for the $1,500 one. If I'm going for a knee, I'm going to go with the $650 one. But the thing is, I never propose those unless VA, sometimes, man, VA doubles down, triples down, and then they're just like digging their heels in. And I'm like, all right, we need an independent medical opinion to shake them up. So then we'll do them. But, I'll pitch a $1,500 medical opinion if I think we're going to get $40,000 in back pay, because that's a cost benefit analysis. That's worth it. And most of my clients agree. So yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That's I'm learning so much. So, and look, and that's appreciated, being very transparent. And I think that that's the most important, because, we deal with attorneys. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're paying for. We have no idea. And it's just, and then right now in this climate, you may want to do right, because a lot of these things can be reevaluated, and they're like, you were just doing hosting a parade or doing an event, and we see you on Instagram, and there's no way that you're homicidal, suicidal, and everything else.
Right. I read that and I was like, I talked to this guy. No.
Have you seen anybody go to jail or anyone get it really, really in trouble, or the VA recouping money or anything like that?
I have not. I've because I'm on that forum. I know somebody had a conversation, kind of like ethically as an attorney, like, what do you do if your client's lying and basically getting over on the system? And I'm like, ooh, I don't even want to know the answer, because I don't want to do anything about that. I'm just like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible thing, and I hope it never happens to me. But I haven't heard of anybody getting in trouble, except for the ones we see on the news. That the big dude was like a bodybuilder and was getting like 100% because he couldn't walk, and like he's been doing leg day every day, kind of thing.
But there's something
So,
wrong with his knee, right? So yeah,
right.
I totally get it. I want to go back to tinnitus, right? Because
Okay.
I'm telling these all stories based on me. Okay. So with me, of course, tinnitus, I don't the VA doesn't go hand in hand with hearing loss, apparently.
No.
Which justified because you may not have ringing in your ears, but I do actually, I got rated for tinnitus and not hearing loss, and I have hearing aids from the VA. So I don't know. So my question is, and it's whatever, right? We're 100%. So
Right.
my question is there I guess an understanding that if the VA fixes you, meaning they gave me hearing aids, I should be able to hear, right? Does that take away from you getting compensation because they fixed you?
No. No.
Okay.
So, well, I do always tell clients that, like they'll go and have a surgery and then their knee is better. I'm like, well, VA doesn't pay you to get well, because then they'll reevaluate and they're like, oh yeah. I mean, but if you get a total knee replacement, you get 30%. That's that. But like sometimes they'll say, I'm trying to think of something they'll say that's resolved, but sometimes they'll say that your condition's resolved and they're going to reduce you. You're not 20% for your knee now, you're 10% or something like that if it wasn't a surgery. But sometimes they'll do that. But the usually, like with a tinnitus, you can be rated for tinnitus but not hearing loss. The hearing loss threshold for VA is weird. You can have hearing loss, but it's not the compensable it's not to the compensable level of VA. So they're looking at speech, like conversational speech, that sort of thing. So you can have frequency loss but not hearing loss to be compensated by the VA.
Got it. When you do
And
that
since you're
second test.
yeah, exactly. And so when you were rated 100%, all of your VA medical stuff is covered. It doesn't matter what it is, whether you're service connected or not. So that's why you have hearing aids to the VA for free, which is not for nothing, because those suckers are expensive.
They are. They
Yes.
are. And they're great.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what everybody's been hearing all these years.
Well, and you said something else that I want to go back to, because you said, well, since the VA treated me for it and acknowledges I have the condition, shouldn't I be rated for it? No. So this is the VBA and the VHA.
Oh, wow.
Remember those, the divided health. So I get this all the time for people who are not 100%. They come in and they're like, well, I have diabetes, but the VA treats me for diabetes, but they won't rate me for it because it's not service connected. They can't connect it to your service. So if you're above 50%, they will treat you for just about everything you have at VHA, but they won't necessarily service connect you for it. So I get it all the time, because we have, older veterans come in here and they're like, well, they're treating me for it. I'm like, yeah, but you're not service connected for it. It goes back to those three elements. Something happens in service, you have a current condition, and then we have to show it's that link between the two. So if there's no link, they'll treat you, but they ain't gonna rate you.
But what's so crazy? Look, this is gonna be the Sheena show, because I didn't go back to it after, but I actually got the the hearing loss lawsuit. I actually got I was a part of that.
Oh, the 3M one. Hey!
Yes, the 3M one, because I actually lost my hearing because of the earplugs. Literally.
Did you get anything?
I did.
Did you?
I
Okay,
did.
you're the first person I've heard that's gotten anything. You go. Yay, Sheena!
10 grand. 10 grand. I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
well
it's kind of like VA, what y'all doing? But like you said, leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
I'm gonna let it rest. Cool.
Yes.
So we have
leave it be.
Leave it be. So Simeon said, great information. Thank you so much. And is it Black Script Films? Is there a way to service connect ailments after leaving the reserves within a year if you didn't go to sick call? That's a good one.
That is a good one. So I'm going to give you the standard law school answer. It depends.
Maybe it depends.
It depends. So it just depends on what it is. Okay, first off, I want to say these National Guard and Reserve people drive me nuts.
Yeah, I was one of those, and it sucks. It sucks.
It does, because it's easier when you're active duty, because anything that happens to you can be service connected while you're in service. But when you're a reservist or a guardsman, we have to prove that it happened while you were drilling, or while you were on deployment, or while you were active. So that becomes a whole lot of me going through and your information report and lining out your drill days and all that kind of stuff, and then they always, like, well, he was on drill until October 14th and he went and got treated by his private physician on October 15th. So it couldn't have been while I was like, seriously?
Wow.
it's splitting hairs, and that's usually when I'll go to BVA because I'm like, really?
Got it.
Because it's a legal argument. It's like, well, okay, if he had the issue on the 15th, well, then he had it on the 14th, and if he had it on the 14th, then he had it on the 13th.
Right. Where does it go? Yeah.
Yeah, I make that argument too because VA has started probably in the last 2 years saying that your effective date, you put your claim in January, they don't rate you until October, you get your exam in July, and so your effective date should be January. And they're like, no, your effective date is July because that's when you had your exam and you were first eligible. And because your eligibility date, your effective date is based on the date of your claim or the date your entitlement arose, whichever is later. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I got this whole like half page of a legal argument. I just copy and paste it. But it's basically, it argues the law that says you shouldn't do that because the entitlement arose. Why would you put in a claim for something you weren't going to have for 7 months?
Right.
Are you you got a premonition, so, and that's kind of, sometimes I get snarky and say that too.
I love that.
Like, is the veteran is not anticipating that they're going to have a condition. They put in for it in January because they had it in January. And I'll say, if they had it on July 14th, and they had it on the 13th, and they had it on the 12th, like, come on. And sometimes I've won those and sometimes I haven't. And so when I don't win, I go to BVA. Because it's a legal argument. That is a legal argument because I use a lot of law and there's a lot of cases that support that argument.
Okay, that's very helpful. So he also mentioned GERD. You talked about GERD and length, so you got to go back and watch.
So that's what he's talking about, heartburn, GERD. We could try it, but I will tell you a lot of the ways that we get that. Oh, I love that. Okay, so that's good. But you don't let your year run out. Don't let your year run. Put something in. With heartburn and GERD, maybe you do it secondary to, like, if you have a musculoskeletal rating, like a knee or an elbow or a back or something, and you take ibuprofen or naproxen or something, an NSAID. We often claim GERD secondary to the NSAID use because it kind of jacks up your stomach and causes the acid reflux and that sort of thing.
Oh.
But again, with the current GERD ratings as they are, because they changed it, you're lucky to get 10%. You got to have that esophageal stricture. So, if you'll have a swallowing problem, I'm not saying don't file for it, but just don't get your hopes up. You might get zero. You might get zero. If it's just heartburn and reflux, again, I'm not saying don't do it. And actually, I think you should do it because even our clients get upset when they get a 0% rating for something. But zeros are not terrible because you can secondarily connect other things. So if you're, we get people, especially after the PACT Act thing for Agent Orange and hypertension, we were getting all kinds of Vietnam vets service connected for hypertension at 0%. And they were all freaking out. They're like, I take medication. And that's true. And that's where the rating schedule falls. But that heartburn, that hypertension opens up to other things. You might have other conditions. I'm trying to think of, that was a bad example because sleep apnea causes hypertension. But anyway, it opens it up to other things. So you can get other things. You can have heart issues that you could get from your hypertension. So maybe you have ischemic heart disease and now your hypertension, so it's secondary to your hypertension.
Kind of like foot, hip, knee.
Yes, exactly.
Like, okay.
Yeah, the knee bone's connected to the ankle bone kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do that. So if you jacked up your knee and surface, you get that service connected, but you have back pain. Well, pain is now rateable as of 2018, Saunders v. Wilkie.
Yes.
And so that wasn't before. And I argue that all the time. A lot of people at VA don't seem to realize it. But anyway, but we argue that all the time, that your back is jacked up now because of your altered gait and overcompensation for your jacked up knee that is service connected. And we win those frequently. So
yeah. I remember a guy from the VA told me, he was like, all you got to do is read your denials or read the ratings, and it tells you exactly.
They put the law in there. Yes.
Right.
Use it against them.
Yes. And people are still going to be like, I don't know what to do. And then you just go to Kristen and her wonderful team. And
I take care of it.
And she takes care of
it. We do.
He said, thank you very much for the information. So Lee Brown said, file for TDIU. Is it possible to get unclaimed conditions SC during process?
Service connected during process.
Yes.
Okay, so he filed, if I'm understanding this, he filed for TDIU and he's asking, is it possible to get unclaimed conditions during service connected during that? It is. Okay. It is.
I'm glad you understood.
I have feelings about TDIU, and I'm going to share.
What is TDIU?
So it's I actually could not tell you what that acronym stands for, but it's the unemployability insurance that VA pays. So basically, you're not 100% scheduler with your conditions, but you can get 100% pay because you're unemployable due to your conditions that you do have. So there's criteria there. and this is everybody's gonna be like, it's gonna go over the head. But it's because it took me like a year to like get it down. But you have to be a minimum of 70% rated. You have to be rated 70%, and one of your ratings has to be 40% or more.
Okay.
To be eligible to apply for it. You also can't be working. So if you're working and you put in TDIU, it's a guaranteed you're not going to get it. So
how do they know?
quit.
Sorry, yeah.
Well,
how do they know you're working?
Well, because when you put in TDIU, you have to, when you fill out the application, they ask you to list your like 3 past employers or most recent employers, and they contact your employers to find out why you left and if they had to provide you with accommodations to continue working as long as you did. So so if you put in for TDIU, they're going to reach out to your employers. And if you don't put your employers down, you're not going to get rated, or you're not going to get it. So TDIU for me is always a last resort. But to answer his quick question, yes, you can still get service connected for other conditions during that process. I always encourage people to try to go 100% schedule if you think you can get there. The only time I recommend TDIU is if you're only like you have nothing more and you're at 70 or you're at 80 and like you just don't have anything to get you that last hump to get to 100. That's the only time I recommend it, because there are some restrictions with TDIU. So with TDIU, if you're 100% scheduler, you can work all day long. You can make $500,000, $1 million a year, and it's no big deal. You can still get your disability. If you file for TDIU and get it, you're restricted to, you can't make more than the poverty threshold, not the poverty level, which is different, but the poverty threshold. And like 2 years ago, it was $15,255 or something was all you could make in a year. And I had a client who had TDIU, and then VA found out that he'd been working for 3 years while he was getting TDIU, and he was making way more than the poverty threshold. So they're taking that back. I can't remember if they were going to recoup it from him either, because it's kind of dishonest. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that will get a recoupment set down on you, because you weren't honest, and there are parameters for getting TDIU. The other thing I don't like about TDIU, again, this is all looking at total disability based on, thank you, Grover. I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it's the unemployability insurance. But the other thing I don't like about it is that a lot of the states offer you like property tax exemptions and personal, those kinds of things, those extra bennies you get when you're 100% scheduler. If you are TDIU, not all states will give that to you.
Wow, because you don't have the 100% or
permanent and total. You have to have 100. A lot of states require you. I believe Virginia, the state that I live in, requires you to have permanent and total in order to get those benefits.
Georgia doesn't give you hardly anything unless you're 100%. Really? You get nothing. Ooh. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough in Georgia for sure.
It's roughing it in Georgia. Well, I mean, and so that's the thing, like we had one guy who got TDIU back to like 2008. He had a BVA claim before. There she goes. She's got it. 15,650 is this year. Thank you, Marsha. Look, she's all over it. She's like our little researcher over there. Yeah. And Grover too. I love it. I'm just over here blathering away and like throwing half things out, but they're picking up my slack. So but when you do TDIU, you miss out on those bennies too, and then you're restricted if you wanted to work. And so, like, if you got this great job offer that you could do, so you can't do it. But I realize there are people that don't have 100% scheduler. So if that's the case, I think somebody said what they had. Like 80% total, 60. Yeah, okay. So it's a choice, and I always inform my clients because my job is to inform and advise, and then the client makes up their mind what they want to do. But I always try to shy away with it, because I think people should try to go for the gold, go for the 100% scheduler if you can. Not everybody's 100%, and we tell clients that too. But I feel like if you're close enough and we can get you there, I'd really rather you get there. So
okay, so damn, I lost my train of thought. With that, permanent total. So people ask me this all the time, and I'm 99.9% sure I know the answer. But permanent and total, you can work. You can earn any amount of money. There's no restrictions, no matter how you're rated. 100% permanent total is it.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, because somebody asked me, and I was like, I think I know.
Now, there's something that I found out a few months ago. For anybody who is 100% permanent and total, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were. If you go to studentaid.gov, you can apply, and they'll forgive your student loans.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, that was the day I got 100%. I was like,
Yes, exactly. So I found out a few months ago and I was like, oh, I don't know if they're still doing it, but if they are, I mean, that's a beauty right there.
Oh, it's a beauty. And they actually, for anyone who has gotten your 100% recently, they send you a packet of all the things you can apply for. Like they send a big giant. So if you receive that, you're like, oh, what is this? And you talk to the side, it tells you everything that you can apply for at 100%. And there's some states where you could be less than 100%. So I would always recommend people to go to their site. So mine is georgia.gov. So you go to your respective site and go to the veteran section, and you can be 10%, even 0% in some cases, and get your tag or whatever the case may be. So I would just say that. So Damian Owen said, file for migraine, service connected to PTSD, I don't know what OSA is, and tinnitus. I have a Nexus DBQ and migraine chart. Do I have a good shot at being rated? Hope you know all these acronyms.
I love that he's all over the acronyms. So so OSA is obstructive sleep apnea. So yeah, so certain, yes, absolutely. Yeah, there you go. Run to file 20,000.
Run immediately. Yes.
So yeah, so if you have all that stuff, Damian, I think you have a pretty good shot at it. I will say, I just got a decision today from a client that just, it made me mad. Because he got a fabulous Nexus letter, and it was actually a reputable one. It wasn't one of those crazy ones. For his PTSD, he should be 70 and he's rated 50. And we put it in. I made my arguments, made some other arguments, because even though he submitted it with that Nexus letter, they went and got another opinion that was not favorable. And what we call that in my advocate world is develop to deny, which is they're not supposed to do. There's all kinds of law about that too, and I won't bore you all with the details, but there is a law that says, if you should accept private opinions as long as they're credible, and you should use those, and you don't order an exam. You just take that at face value and you use that as your evaluation tool. I think they did a DBQ, because sometimes when you come in with those, they don't, and he's got a DBQ, so that's even better. And a migraine chart. I mean, like the disability benefits questionnaire. So those are all the questions they go through when you go to the exam. So he didn't have a DBQ, but he had a Nexus letter. Basically, VA just said, oh, we found the VA exam more credible. But here's the thing, the VA exam was like 3 lines. And the opinion that he submitted was like 4 pages and in depth and addressed all the things. And basically the one that VA got was, nah, because I said, and I was like,
that sounds like them.
Yeah. And so I went through, made this beautiful argument that, basically, and excuse my language, as bull, and went through and all the law and why that was bull, and developed to deny all that law, yada, yada, yada. And you're supposed to accept it. And basically they came back and said, yeah, we're doubling down. This is it. We're sticking here. And so my client got mad at me, and I hate that he got mad at me, but like, it's, I can't make VA agree with me. And so this is one that I would take to the BVA, because I'm right. They're wrong. They should have never ordered. They did 2 more exams past his favorable letter. They did 2 more exams that were unnecessary, and basically got 2 unfavorable. So now they're like, oh, well, it's 2 to 1, except your 2 aren't even, yes, they're not even as substantive, and that just burns me up. So, we get frustrated on the daily, because I'll make a beautiful argument and they're like, meh.
Which VA is this? So we know not to ever go there. What state was it in?
I don't know. I think it was it was Florida. It was Florida. And I was
don't go to the VA in Florida. I've actually have been told that, though. People that were in Florida, they'll come all the way back to Atlanta to go. Not that the Atlanta one was good. It had some rough patches, but the Atlanta one is much better than it was a couple of years ago. So yeah.
So I mean, like, I think it sounds like Damian has a really good shot. But I will tell you, Damian, if you don't get it outright, don't give up, because that's what they're waiting for you to do. Call me.
Yes, please call her, because she honestly, like, she just was like appealing. I was like, whoa. It was like I was getting supercharged. I was like, yeah, she told y'all every single time. And it was like, and they were coming back saying that they were making mistakes. And this is after I filed a gazillion claims. So it makes a difference when someone can quote the law and they know exactly what they're talking about. So we appreciate you. So Ivan says, listen, this is amazing information. Miss Kristen, I owe Sheena some official tea. So Ivan is in the UK. So he's actually tuning in late at night right now.
And now you sure are.
Once
That's
again, thanks
awesome.
for the knowledge and blessings. Yes, 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 yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
What is it? Is it big? What big
Big
face? That's
face.
my lawyer.
Lawyer. Oh. Whoop, whoop.
Yes, everybody's lawyer. Everybody.
Everybody.
So
Everybody.
I had another off script question. So
Okay.
when I was going through my process, what's funny when you mentioned no one having their own records, I remember I came off active duty in 2005 and they were like, you need to submit your records to this location. So, cause I joined the reserves right after blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm keeping my records. And I guess like that building burned down. It was like the most crazy thing that could happen. People's records got burnt up, but I kept my records. And then when I went in the VA portal now, because it's a lot easier to navigate, there were a lot of when I would go to the VA, all those records are there. And I was like, oh,
right.
And people tell you, they'll say, if you look like you're in good health, if you're of sound mind, they identify all those things. So when we're doing, like, whether we're working with you or let's just say we try to, do it on our own, maybe they feel ashamed, whatever the case may be. Do you have to pull those VA records from the portal? Or should the VA already have them? Is it better for you to highlight, I'm talking about this claim. So, know what I'm getting at?
No, so I get that. Actually, I get that question a lot. So if you have your records, you need to give them up to VA. And I'll just give you a little side tidbit here because it's all about the money, you said.
Money.
Girl, I have won some high dollar cases because when there is a law, I call it 3.156C1. And so it rolls off the tongue because
I was like, what?
It's a beautiful thing. So basically, there is a law in the books that if you put in for a claim, let's say you put in for a claim in 2005, and you had your records, and VA didn't because you had your records and you didn't provide them. VA denied you everything because they said, well, we don't have your service treatment records. So then fast forward, you come to see me in 2022, whatever. And I'm like, oh, Sheena, you got denied all these things. Do you have your records? And you're like, yeah, here they are. So then we upload your records because you had them. I can get you rated all the way back to 2005.
Let me go back to my records and see. Look, we're gonna go back and get that 100%.
So
past dated. What?
Yes, I got a homeless vet with 3 children. Well, she had 2 and 1 on the way. And that was what happened to her. But she didn't have them. They were just uploaded like 5 years after she submitted her claims in 2014. And I got her rated 90% back to 2014.
Oh my goodness.
And then, and then wound up getting her to 100%. But it was because they had associated her records later with her file. And I love that law. I've used it frequently. I'm waiting on an award print from another one, and I'm just waiting because it's a good thing.
Oh my gosh.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So there's that. But if your records, usually when you sign on with somebody like me, so here's the thing. If you sign on with an accredited VA person, attorney or claims agent, we can have access to the VA's system that they use to process your claims and all that stuff. So we can see things veterans can't. So we see your CMP exams. We see all of, we can see the claims notes, who's working on your file, when they last worked on it, their suspense date, which is allegedly the date that they're next going to look at it, which it comes and goes and they're not looking at it. So, but we can see all those things. So all of the things that VA has on you, I can see when you sign on with me and I'm your representative. The only things that we really can't track is like your payments and stuff. I don't see when VA's paid you. I mean, I can kind of guess from piecing some things together, but I don't see that they've like paid to you, whatever. But if you have records, you should certainly upload them. And it should all be in there. So clients always ask me, do you need my stuff? I don't need your stuff because it'll all be in there. So it's just redundant stuff. But man, if anybody has the records and they didn't give them up to VA, and you put in a claim and got denied, it's a big money one.
I was going to say, because I physically, the green folder that they gave, I was like,
exactly.
And I was like, oh, I didn't even know. And you find things in there you didn't even know you had because you're a young kid, you don't remember. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Let me make sure I file.
Well, exactly. And we had a Navy retiree who took his with him. And he filed in 2007 or something. He took his with him, and we're like, well, you don't have any service treatment. He's like, well, I have them. It's like, what?
Right.
So again, waiting on that award print.
Right. And that's a segue into, usually how long does it take? I think you alluded to some of them, but like appeals, right? If you could range from the shortest to the
right,
maybe the lengthiest.
Okay.
I don't know.
So I will tell you again, I'm going back to VA is consistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
However, we just had a conference and a VA spokesman came and talked to us and they put out the stats. And so the stats are that they are trying to do initial claims within, I think it was like 145 days,
Okay.
process them from start to finish. They're trying to do HLRs and supplementals in 125 days. That's their average. That's where they're
So
trying
almost
to be.
6
Now,
months.
I've seen decisions come out in a day. Those are usually denials.
That's
So
true.
if you get it the next day, they're like, I didn't even look at it, but denied. And
Oh my
so
God.
so those are usually denied. I've seen positive ones come out in 2 days. I've seen them take a week. I've seen them take 18 months to do an initial claim
Yeah.
processing. So the appeals, if you go
Wow.
to BVA, you're waiting. I mean, the appeals for people, when people go to the BVA on the hearing route, the hearing docket, you can wait 2 to 3 years to get a hearing and then another 18 months. So it's like almost a 5-year process to get your BVA appeal through the hearing thing. And so I'll go back to, I think I started saying before and I got sidetracked, imagine.
No.
But people will immediately, they'll get denied like their first claim out the gate and they're like, I'm going to BVA. Okay, well, you're clogging up the docket, which is already clogged, just
Yeah.
putting it
Yeah.
out there. So if I get somebody who's within a year of their decision date and they have put in a BVA claim, I usually tell them to pull it and I'll help them withdraw it because I can usually get a quicker resolution to it and get the grant at the AOJ level than waiting 5 years for a hearing that doesn't need a hearing. So,
Right. No,
yeah,
I would concur that, you
yeah,
might feel like you're doing everything right as the veteran. Like all you got to do is do it online and, you
yeah,
feel like you're empowered, but it's those appeals. Like those appeals are
yeah.
literally gold. And I'm seeing that and understanding it even more as you're explaining it. And I was all through the site, like really in the site. Like I felt like I could beat my chest. And then I'm like, okay, I got denied. What now? Or
So I
0%.
just want you to know, Sheena, this is the book they have for veterans law. You see how thick this is?
Yeah, no, I'm not
This
reading
is
that. So,
no, I don't even like reading this, but I mean, this is the thing. And that's why I always say, people are like, I can do it on my own. And I'm like, really? And yeah, I
right.
mean, you can, I mean, and you're welcome to do so. But when you're not charged for initial claims and then we can get your appeals done quicker and more efficiently,
Super
like, why
efficient.
wouldn't you hire an attorney or a claims agent? I mean, just make sure they're VA accredited.
Right.
That's all I'm
And then,
saying.
it's essentially coming out of the money that is coming to you that you probably
Right.
didn't know you were gonna get. So it's like
Right.
to me, it's a win-win-win. So
It
if
is.
someone is like, let's say they're still either active duty or still, just haven't filed yet, what is something that they can do to get essentially ready for you?
Right.
What's the big bag, the big money
Right.
bag that they can bring?
Go to sick call.
Go to
For
please.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything you want to claim. I mean, headaches, sinuses, everything. Just get it in your record. So that's the thing that we have trouble with for those three things. What happens in service, what you have now, and then what the connection between the two. We can get you into the doctor now for your condition and start establishing care for that. But I can't go back to your service and get you to go
Mm,
to sick call.
right.
Usually, if we have to, especially if it's a long time ago, we can cure those things with buddy statements and other statements. I mean, like I said, for my elbow, I got a buddy statement from somebody who saw me with my arm in a sling, and I wrote a statement in support of my claim. I'm actually kind of shocked that they listened to it, but I had a very sympathetic CMP examiner, and I'm grateful for it. And
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those things. I didn't care if they gave me 0 for it. I just wanted it rated because it happened in
Right.
Desert Storm, and it was
'Cause
the
my
only
elbow,
thing I
I was in a sling. I
exactly.
deserve
I was
it.
like, come on. So yeah,
Right.
exactly. So so it's that kind of thing. Go to sick call. That's what you really need to do. We have a
Mhm.
lot of people who sign up with us to do BDD claims. This is before you're discharged. And so again, maybe where's somebody can help me with that acronym because I don't know what it is. I
What
want to
is
say
it?
before discharge. BDD.
BDD? Right,
Yes,
we're leaning
BDD.
on you, Marsha. What's BDD?
That's right. What we got? What we got? So anyway, but that's before you get out. You put it, and you have a window. You have a 90-day to 100. So you can't
Oh,
file before you're 180 days out, but you have to file before you're 90 days out. So the idea is that you do all your exams before you get out, and so that they have a proposed rating for you, so that it starts the day after you discharge. Right?
wow.
Sounds fantastic, right? No.
No.
So I mean, like
I can't just step out and step into 100%. What do you mean?
no, and you would think because I'm like, if you file for it while you're in service, should be service connected, right? You
Mm,
think. But no, I'm surprised at how many are denied. And so Ron and I have a theory that because people get all strung out about like, well, I missed my window. I don't want to miss my window. I get my BDD claim in. The problem with it is we think personally, it seems like the military doctors are usually the ones who do those CMP exams, and they're a little bit harsher.
Oh, they're harsher.
Yeah.
They're harsher. They're
So
harsher.
that's why like I see these BDD claims all the time, and I'm like, how do they not get, yes, they call, PDD or BDD, benefits delivery at discharge. There you go. So thank you, Marcia. But yes,
Marsha
definitely
for
go to
president. Yes.
exactly. So I'm getting buttons. And so I think, if you do the BDD, we find when we look at these, I don't see how anybody, if you put in a claim, it should be service connected, even at 0. And then I can work on increases later. But I am shocked at how many get denied. And I'm like, and they're saying it didn't really happen or it's not chronic. And I'm like, well, if you hurt your knee and you're limping all the time, again, you're not going to the doctor every week on sick call to complain about your knee to have them throw Motrin at you. You just go buy your own Motrin.
Right.
I mean,
So you said 90 days prior to discharge.
Yes. Yeah. Your window closes at 90 days. It opens at 180 days and then it closes at 90. So you have to have your discharge date or a damn good idea of it.
Okay. So 6 months before my terminal leave ends, essentially. And then I have until 3 months before I get out. That's the only window I have for that.
That's the only window you have. Yeah.
But I can just get out, right? And I've been to sick call. I got all my,
So my thing is what you do, here's what you ought to do. In my opinion, is what you ought to do is just come to somebody like us, put in put in an intent to file before you get out. And so that stakes your date before you're out, before your discharge date. So the earliest date you could get is your discharge, the day after your discharge date. And anything you're granted, you'll get back to the day after your discharge.
Okay, so intent to file at a year.
Yeah.
It could be a
year. Yeah, you have
a
year to use that intent. So, like if you're like a month out from getting discharged, put in an intent to file. Yeah, they're saying they're pushing BDD heavy. And so, okay, and he's overseas. So that makes sense. I was going to mention that too. So if you're overseas, you have even more of a window.
Oh.
And I have clients overseas as well. And I've had some overseas BDD clients. Some of them got in the window. Some of them didn't because the window is, you really need to err on the side of 180 days instead of 90 if you're overseas, because we represented a guy and like he put his stuff in and it was like 90. He had like, I don't know, he was before the 90, but it was just on the cusp of it. And he never got his exams while he was over there.
Oh, right.
He had to wait and come back and get them. So he still got, which is kind of like, okay, well, you're technically, now you're not in BDD. So
I guess I don't really see like, what's the real benefit? Because you can just get out and do the same thing.
Yeah. And like I said, I find Ron and I personally feel that the BDD examiners are a little bit harsher than
so that's
the VA
good.
ones.
That's good information. So I know Ivan, you have your family member. So tell her not to do that. maybe just wait. Yeah, maybe just wait might be a better option.
Put that intent to file in, and but we have people, we take BDD clients too, even before they're in their window, which is preferable because you got to do all this paperwork, the self-help, the self-assessment and all that kind of stuff. You got to gather your medical records. I mean, again, it's not a problem. It just, when Ron and I look at, we're like, I don't see any great benefit to it.
Yeah, I'm like, So okay, so someone, let's say they're out. They're like, don't even say the word Army or Navy to me. I hate
that was me.
Yeah, it's so many people. It's so interesting. So now they're like, you know what? Sheena convinced me. Now I want to file because I was just afraid or whatever.
Yes.
What's the best way to present to you? Just you say the documents you can usually see unless they physically have them. But what else is there? Should they just say, okay, write down all the things that from head to toe? Maybe what's wrong with them.
So I'm so glad you asked, Sheena. So it's almost like you've been through our process. So we do have a process, and I really like to stick to it. So what we do, because we have those 3 elements, so we get access to your records, so that we do a record review, which helps us identify what you went sick call for and anything, all that stuff. Then what we do is a head to toe evaluation with you. It's done over the phone or in the office if you're local. So we'll do it, mostly it's done over the phone. And basically we call it the head to toe because it's like a interview-based physical. So, and we say head to toe because if I say, Sheena, what you got going on today? And you're like, well, I have headaches and I have sinus issues. And then you leave and you're like, oh, I forgot to tell her about my knee and my back and all that stuff. So we say head to toe. We have a chart. We have a little sheet that we ask all these questions that are relevant. And I tell my clients to wine and shine. Because just because you don't think it's service connected doesn't mean it can't be. And this is what we do all day, every day. And so my goal, my motivation is to get you as much as I can get you. Like I said, not everybody's 100%, but if I can get you from 10% to 90, hey, who doesn't want that? So,
Who doesn't want that? Wine and shine.
exactly.
Somebody put that in the
Wine and
chat.
shine.
Wine and
Exactly. Wine and
shine.
shine.
Your one
So
chance to wine.
right. And so that's the point where when you sign on with us, we start out with an intake form that's done on the computer electronically. Then I send the engagement agreement, and that's signed electronically as well. Then we send VA forms that make me your representative before VA. Again, digital signatures. We've upped our game recently. We have digital signatures and text messages now, and so we're just like so in 21st century. But once we do the forms and I get access to your records, we start that record review. We wine and shine. Marsha's got it, and so we do the head to toe evaluation, and then we marry those two things up: the record review and the head to toe, because that's the element 1 of what happened in service. That's element 2. The conditions you currently have. And then we see what we can do with that, how we can do a strategy for that. Sometimes we'll 2-step things. And I just sent out a thing. I don't know if you got it because I think you're not on my list anymore of active clients, but I sent out a HONA blast today I had to set up rules of engagement. And so I sent out a document called Rules of Engagement to ask my clients to not submit their own claims when I'm representing them, because when you're submitting your own claims, you are welcome to do it, but I will likely drop you as a client because you're getting in my way of doing what I do.
Understood.
We have a process. This is what we do. We have a reason for what we do. Even if you don't understand it, ask us and we'll explain it. But I've had people like, we're doing appeals and stuff over here, and they're just like rattling off stuff, and we're rattling off claims. They're rattling off stuff that should be appealed, and they're putting it on initial claims form. And next thing you know, I'm over here working on an appeal for that same condition, and we got VA saying, "Oh, we need a request for application. You didn't put it on the right form." I'm like, "Wait, what? I'm still working on it." Like, what? And then it's more work for us. You're getting in my way and you're causing me more work, and I got lots anyway. So I did rules of engagement, and I was like, basically, submitting your own claims is cause for withdrawal. So
I don't blame. No, I totally. Anyone should understand that. Maybe they just they didn't fully grasp. Somebody told them. Barracks lawyer told them to just do that.
The barracks lawyers. And the other thing I will tell you that people, that just drives me insane. VA.gov. It is not reliable. Don't take it to the bank. I assure you that like probably 2/3 of the information on there is wrong. I don't know why. I have clients all the time saying, well, they closed out my claim, but I look and they haven't. But VA.gov says that they have. Or a client calls and says, I thought we claimed migraines, but it says vertigo on VA.gov. We did claim migraines. I have no idea why it says vertigo on VA.gov.
So, that's surprising. That's super surprising. Y'all heard that? I did not know that.
So, I mean, it's good. Like, it's good, but if you have a representative, ask them for the real, because VA.gov is not it.
And even the app. I know the app is not super. That's even worse.
No. And we'll have people say, well, it says my claims, or we'll call, because we see the decisions about 2 weeks before the client sees them. And so we'll notify our clients that, hey, we got this decision, congratulations, yada, yada. And
I love that email. I'll be like, what?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, your decision can come out. So there's 3 parts to your decision. There's a rating decision, which is the narrative paragraph thing that says, we thank you for your service, blah, 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 blah. And then it says, this is what we decided, and this is why, blah, 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 right? Then you get a code sheet that shows you every service-connected condition and the rating and the effective date, that sort of thing. And then it shows your overall rating and then things you were denied. That's your code sheet. The final piece of your decision is the decision letter, and that's all about due process. Again, I won't bore you all with the legality, but the notification letter is when your decision is final. So we've had rating decisions come out in November, and we don't get that notification letter done until February. And so that decision, though it was made, could change between that November rating decision coming out and February notification. It's not over until you get that letter. And you don't get your back pay until you get that letter. So usually when the letter comes out, then the award print comes out at the same time, but the decision's not final until you get that notification letter. So
got it. Okay, because I was refreshing that website, like, where's that 100%?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So like we tell you, hey, you're 100% now, and you're like, no, I'm not. VA.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I was like,
no, exactly. So it's because the notification letter hadn't come out yet.
Got it.
So that's why it wasn't refreshing. Yeah. So again, we're here for you. Like, because we can see all that stuff and we don't mind. I got a great staff, and a lot of people that started with us early on. It was just me and Ron, And then we hired an admin assistant, and now I think I have like 9 employees. But as I was telling Sheena, I don't like to turn anybody away. So rather than turn people away, we just hire more people. And all of my people are really good. All of my staff are really fantastic. They're all very knowledgeable and capable and competent. And I know some people get upset because they don't get to talk to me directly anymore, but like I'm back here doing appeals. I'm doing the law work, man. And so, I mean, I want to hear all about you, but most of the time you're calling me to tell me you want the physical therapy and, whatever. And I mean, like, that's good. Yay.
She ain't got time. That's okay. You can say it. She doesn't have time. Okay. Just like those commercials where it's like, oh, I answer the phone every time. Well, then what kind of attorney are you answering the phone every single time? We don't want that. We want
there's that.
Fighting these appeals.
As you know, I am very responsive if somebody writes, because we have email, we have a secure portal that goes through email. And we also have text messaging now. So you can usually, if you really, really need me, you can send a message there and then I can get you in the middle of appeals. So, and I do try to answer, but all of my people are very competent and capable, and they all have their own designated areas. And if more of y'all sign up, I'll just hire more people.
I asked her, like, again, those who came in a little later, I was like, are you sure? Because there's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to reach out. So, she is super responsive. And sometimes I think I'm even like doing a maybe question, like not even a solid question, and she still responds, and our team is fantastic. And on that same token, like getting you ready for the exam. That's what a lot of people, they ask me just as a regular veteran, like, how do I get ready for an appointment? Like, how should I act? Because these things actually happen. They may have happened 10 years ago, or you still, affected by it, but then you don't want to be too over dramatic and be, people ask me that all the time. And so her team really gets you ready for the appointment, because these things happen to you and you need to just be able to translate it emotionally, say the right words. There's so many different little nuances to this stuff that we shouldn't have to do in order to be, to get our compensation. But it makes a difference when you have someone that's like, yeah, we know exactly how you're supposed to, react to this and that. So
right. We do encourage our clients to do prep calls before they go to their exams.
Yes,
so we
please do the prep calls.
Yes. I mean, it's a service that we offer, and shockingly to me, not all of our clients use it, and I'm not sure why, because we want to maximize your opportunity in these exams, and it's not to tell you what to say in the exam, it's to tell you what to expect and what the rate. We basically let you know what the rating schedule is. So I always use sinusitis as an example, because if you go in, if somebody says to me off the cuff, if you catch me on the street, hey, Kristen, how many non-incapacitating episodes of sinusitis do you have in a year? Well, okay, non-incapacitating means I didn't go on antibiotics for it, but was I all jacked up and had headaches and stuff? Yeah. Did I take Sudafed? Yeah. And then like a week later, I got over it. Well, if you grab me on the street, ask me, I'm like, I don't know, like a couple. Okay, really? It's more like 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
So if I said a couple in my CMP exam, I might get rated and service connected for it, but I'm going to get rated at like 0.
Yep.
Because you get rated at 3 to 6, and 7 or more is 50%. So that matters. So we tell you what the rating schedule is, especially for mental health, because you need to know. We're not telling you what to say. You need to know what they're looking for so that you can articulate your symptoms and your condition and issues the way that they need to hear it to put the right stuff on that DBQ.
And that's exactly what happened to me. Sandstorms, I'm a mess most of the time. And so I got rated. I think I either got denied or I got 0. It was one of those. I think it was 0. And so exactly what she said is exactly what I did. Boom, 30%. I was like, look at that. It was like literally exactly like that. So, but it's true. But I would be like, well, I mean, you don't really know how to articulate it. And that's where some of the issues come in with people. So love it.
And you blow it off. Yeah.
And you blow it off. Right. Exactly. With the and it's nothing to do with you all. I would say maybe people are just uncomfortable, or they're just, it's a sensitive topic. For me, it wasn't. Maybe because I did 20 years and I was like, I am ready to have Uncle Sam pay me for all that they use me up, and I'm gonna make sure that I get my compensation.
Well, and also I will say that, to build on that, it's not even that. It's that you don't, I mean, if you don't know what they're going to ask you, it's the first time you heard the question. And so for me, I mean, like I do this, but I looked at the rating schedule before I go to my exams, because I want to know what they're looking for. Because I don't want to be thinking about what they just asked me when they ask me. I want to think about it ahead of time, so I'm prepared. That's why we call them the prep calls. And so I now have 4 people in my office. Ron was the only one that used to do prep calls. I have 4 people in the office now who do prep calls.
That's so
So,
awesome. She's the
and if you
only
get Ron, it's
choice.
because everybody, I know, if you get Ron, it's because everybody's out sick.
No, right, okay, but even still, everyone has like this. They understand
Yeah.
what needs to be said. So
Yeah.
she's the obvious choice. She's the only choice. So I don't want to hear anything else. Just saying.
Woo, woo,
Woo,
Sheena.
woo. So Ivan says the hypothetical story here is that the docs here, non-military on the economy, are in favor of military members based on the culture of the medical system here, which is great, by the way. So he's in the
I would
UK
agree with
again.
that.
So
No, I would
yeah,
agree with that. If you're gonna get an exam on the economy, go for it. Absolutely. That in that case, I see where there would be benefit to BDD. I just don't see it everywhere, especially
yeah.
not if you're in the US. If you're CONUS, like, yeah, I think I'd skip it.
No, no bueno. So yeah, I can
No,
definitely
no.
I see that as well.
Yeah.
So Marsha is
Must
and
be.
me too. Ronard's, what is that like? Rana? Is that supposed to be Rana
It's a
signing?
couple times a week instead of, yes, a couple times a week instead of saying 5 to 7 days. Right,
Oh,
exactly. So yeah, so it affects your rating. It's a lot of these DBQs are looking at frequency. When you go for your headaches, first off, you got to have prostrating headaches, which mean you have to, when you get a headache, you can't function, you can't stay at work, you can't look at the computer, you got to be in a dark
right.
room with the light off. You got to be quiet, that kind of stuff. That's prostrating to them. But not only do you have to have prostrating attacks, it's the frequency. Do you have them once a month? Do you have them once every other month? Do you have, and again, I take shots for my migraines, just so
Oof.
I don't get them that often. And then I take medication on top of that. So, but
Oh,
even if I did that and I went in and said, well, I have like one every other month, well, that's going to get me like zero,
mm,
and then, but if I said, like what's more, the case, I have them at least once a month or at least 3 times a month. So, there you get 50%, but it just
given the
depends on that
number.
frequency. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what our prep calls are to do, to let you know what they're looking for and why the rating schedule matters to you. Again, not everybody's at the high end of the rating schedule for that condition, but we want you to know that you need to think about it before you go there and be prepared to answer that question appropriately for you.
And I sympathize with anyone who gets super heavy migraines. Oh my goodness.
They're awful.
That is something where I'm like, if I just don't get migraines and toothaches, I think I'll be okay. Like I get migraines every now and then, but regularly, I just couldn't even imagine. It is
Yeah.
completely debilitating. Maybe I'm more of a baby than anybody else, but when I've had migraines, I am done. I'm done for the week. Like
That's
completely.
worthy of a rating.
It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
So I really, really appreciate everyone who has been asking questions. This really helps. And
Yes.
we got like 9 minutes left. This 2
Ooh,
hours flew by.
look at it.
So I would like for you, if you could, just can you share some of maybe the most interesting, like short cases, or some of the most you mentioned the one about the guy with the farm,
Yeah.
where and he was really, really old. I don't want to say really old.
Well,
He was
he was
elderly,
87. I mean, yes,
older
yes,
man, and was able to get
yes,
something and got the back pay. So if you could just share
right.
maybe a couple of interesting stories, or maybe like some of your most, tug at the
Yeah.
heartstring stories.
So in the office, we have lots of clients, but we have some of them that are just like our, near and dear to our hearts. And so I have one guy who was from our hometown here, but he lives overseas. He had moved overseas, and he had put a claim in years ago for his back. He was a reservist, so he's active duty, and then he got out for like a year, and then he went back in. So he did the entrance physical, all that stuff again. He was
Oh,
back in reserves, and he was doing a PT test. And when he was doing a sit up, something popped in his back, in his lower back. And so he was like, oh, and they put him on profile, all the business. And that was on a drill weekend because they were doing a PT test.
ah,
So he goes home, all this stuff. Well, what happens when he comes to me, he got denied for his back. And now he's got IVDS, and his legs are all jacked up with neuropathy and that sort of thing, and
wow.
sciatica. And so he's got major issues and surgeries and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I don't think he gets around much. His mobility is severely limited. And I want to say he's like maybe in his 60s, late 50s,
Mm,
early 60s. And so VA kept hanging their hat on that year that he was not in service, drill or active, that he had a medical record from the local hospital that he went to the hospital for a neck MRI. And so the VA examiner was hanging their hat on. Well, obviously, this was something that happened in his civilian life, because he went for an MRI, and they said that for his neck, that we're not sure what caused him to go for it, but it must be that. And I'm like, well, why does it have to be that? Like and this was before he hurt himself in drill.
Right.
And so he explained to me, I was like, well, what is this? And he said, I was like, what did you go for? Because it didn't say, the MRI didn't say what was the cause, why he was there, just that he was there for a neck MRI because work sent him. So it was a workers' comp thing. And what he was doing is he pulled a box off the shelf, and the box hit his head. And so the employer insisted that he go get the MRI. So he went and got the MRI. And so the records were kind of scant. But then the VA examiner just speculated that it was, his back. And I'm like, well, the neck is very different from the lower back. So fast forward, he comes to me, I start fighting on this thing, and they dig in. And so I'm like, we got to get an independent medical opinion. So we paid $1,500 for the independent medical opinion because I wanted to win this one.
Right.
And we did. And so basically, he went for a CMP exam over there. And we shared the independent medical opinion that we had. So basically they were like, okay, we're going to bite on this one. So we had the independent medical opinion, but we didn't have the DBQ to show the rating, what the rating should be. Because that's where the DBQ tells you the frequency and the severity and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, right.
So they didn't have that part. So he had to go to a doctor overseas who basically, he took the independent medical opinion, and the doctor's like, I wholeheartedly concur with all this. So basically what happened to him when he was on that PT test is what caused all of his issues going forward.
Independent of,
Right. So we won the case that I filed in 2022. So he got rated 100%. He just got it 100% from there, from 22. So I went back and said, well, yeah, but you guys misinterpreted what was going on. This is a clear and unmistakable error. You misunderstood, and the doctor speculated that this was something that it wasn't. And I got him almost $400,000 in back pay. We got him rated back to 2001, I believe.
Woo!
So that was, and he stuck it out with me. It took us 3 years, but he was so grateful, right?
Oh,
so
what?
It took us 3 years, and I kind of felt like he was my bestie. I mean, he was just like, oh, thank you so much. And we sent him a swag box. And did you get your swag? Did you get your swag, Sheena? Because usually when we get people to 100%, they get a swag box. You didn't get a T-shirt and stuff?
I didn't get a T-shirt. I need a T-shirt.
I'm gonna send you a T-shirt. So usually when we get our people to 100%, we send them a T-shirt. So
it was kind of quick though. It was like soon as we got married, and it was like boom, 100%.
Yeah,
it was real
done.
quick.
Yeah, I'll make sure you get T-shirts. Okay. So but he was just like, oh, how can I repay you? And of course I was like, just pay the bill. But he was very grateful, and it was because of a legal error that I was able to get him back there. So this is the thing when we talk about VSOs and stuff, they're not well versed in the law. No, and I learned about that law. I think one of your questions that we didn't get to was, how do I keep up with the law and stuff?
Yeah.
I go to these conferences with Nova. They have them twice a year, one in the fall, one in the spring, and they are absolutely fabulous. They keep us up to date on the case law that's relevant to what we do. I feel like I have 90 people in my firm, 90 attorneys in my firm, because at any time I can go out there on the forum and say, well, how would y'all handle this? Because a lot of the VA stuff, because they're consistently inconsistent, is figuring out a workaround to their latest and greatest that they're denying for this reason or that reason, because they seem to trend. Yeah, so there's usually trends, and it's like whack-a-mole. So you figure out, you get that one sorted, and then there's another one. So I feel like I have 90 lawyers in my firm because I could ask anytime and they'd answer. And it's a very open community. People are very open and happy to help. It's not that cutthroat lawyer, I'm going to take that client from you. There are too many veterans who need help. we don't need to fight over veteran clients because there's so many of them that need help. So
I know, and I just feel so empowered right now. Like this is really helpful, and I know I can at least give people the tidbits that you've given to, because this is like a little drop in the bucket for what people really would need to know. And there's so many people that are going to watch this that are haven't filed anything ever.
I can send you the book. No.
Yeah, we don't want the book. We're gonna leave that to you. And everybody just go to her when you start your filing or your appealing or anything that you need, because that is a lot to navigate. And like I said, I felt like I was all the way completely inundated. So I'm gonna get to Ivan real quick, and then we got a few more minutes, y'all. So you asked your last few questions. One thing many veterans are waiting on below. Okay, he lists out some information. HR 1282, Major Richard Starr Act, which deals with disability compensation for combat disabled military.
That's the Thomas Ruffning that I told you to go to. That's that.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, that's the referral. Yeah.
Okay, I need that.
That's a referable. Yeah. And then Marsha's asking if I help with SSDI. I do not. That's
Okay.
that's a whole other animal there. And Ron just passed me a note to let me tell y'all that 99% of clients have wrong decisions by VA. So even if you get rated, when you come to me, if you already have a rating, we check to make sure your ratings are appropriate, because shockingly, they lowball you. Shockingly. Yeah. So we
Right.
check all that.
Shockingly.
We don't just, do in the claims that you come to us. We do a thorough analysis of your records and all that stuff. And we pitch to you what we think might be initial claims. We pitch to you increases. We pitch to you appeals. We make sure that your ratings are appropriate. But, like those cues that I talked about, I can get people, I got somebody else back to 91 and 92 for sinusitis and headaches. So
back to what?
1991, 92.
19, not the year.
The year, yes, the year. That was one of my first big wins, and I was like, oh, look at me go. So so I mean, sometimes it takes long. I mean, we two-step things. Sometimes we have to claim something, get it ready before we can claim the next thing. But I always tell people, like the guy who got almost $400,000 overseas, he stuck with me for 3 years, and I'm like, just hang in there, man. We're gonna get this. It's a process, and he was very patient. And in the end, he said, I really appreciate that you stuck it out with me. And I was like, I appreciate you stuck it out with me, man. Because I know everybody wants a quick fix. My goal is to get everybody in and out of here in a year. But sometimes VA doesn't cooperate.
So. And I guess maybe I'm just too, I don't know, ignorant to that type of mentality, because most of the people that I talk to, it's been 20 years and they haven't filed anything. So I'm going to stick out with you. I mean, like you said, with the initial claims, for those who came in late, she's not charging for those, which we're gonna have a talk about that. But she's charging for the appeals, and the percentage of the back pay or whatever, So it's like you're not coming out of pocket. So it's like I'm not really understanding how anyone would not stick it out with you. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't charge you anything I don't get for you. Just saying.
Which most people, like we said at the beginning, those sharks, they're charging just to start, like just to get your documentation. And it's your personal stuff. And you all just handing your information over to anybody. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Okay.
Please. Please stop doing that.
Let me get off my soapbox. So
I love that you're passionate about it.
Oh my gosh, yes, because I've sent referrals. So she says she's still taking clients. Amen.
I am.
So after this, for sure, make sure you reach out to her firm, because they are the best. And like I said, I fired so many, because I was like, I can do it myself. Then I reached out to this person, and it didn't work out. And because I was active duty and then reserve. And then I got out twice. So there was a lot of communication with different organizations, and people were telling me, oh, you need to go to the VFW, you need to go to the DAV, you need to just do it on your own, you need a friend at the VA, like all these different things. And I'm like, none of this stuff has been as seamless as it has been with you. Like not even close, like not even remotely close. So I'm just saying. We
try to communicate. We do.
Yes, the communication is second to none. So any last questions for you all to list in the chat, please? And thank you. And if you have any parting words for us wonderful veterans that probably get on your nerves sometimes, but we're gonna do better as more information goes is disseminated. We're gonna try to do better. But do you have any last parting words you can share?
I think the only thing I would say is just be careful who you work for, and don't be afraid to work with somebody, because you saw that big book I showed you. There's so much to know. I don't even know everything in that book, and I don't want to know everything in that book. I mean, I just want to get people, she fired 2 VSOs. I just want to get people their ratings as much as I can get them. Not everybody's 100%, but we tell you, we shoot straight. If we can't get you to the next rating level, we tell you, and we withdraw, and we'll tell you why. And we'll tell you if you got a rating that you shouldn't touch, we'll tell you that. You just leave it alone. Leave it be. Don't go after it. Just leave it be. But we're very straight shooters. So just be careful who you work with, and make sure that they're VA accredited, because these claim sharks, I don't know what's going to happen with the legislation. Go for the GUARD Act. Tell your representatives to vote for the GUARD Act, because that's the one that protects veterans. The other one just opens the floodgate. And so the other one, the PLUS Act, lets these claim sharks, so they wouldn't be claim sharks at that point, but makes it okay to charge everybody for initial claims. You shouldn't be charged for your initial claims. It's your first tryout. And, GUARD Act. There you go. GUARD Act.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So that's the one that you want to vote for, because that one keeps a check on people being gouged. You shouldn't have to pay 5 times your increase for anything. The VA restricts it that you can't be charged more than 33.33% on any back pay. I charge that because we're that good, and we give that kind of service. We are that good. I'm channeling some Sheena confidence here.
And I saw the progression. Yes, when you're the ish, say it. That's right.
That's right. So, I mean, Sheena's your favorite veteran, but I'm your favorite veterans lawyer.
Yes, I love it. Yes, 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 yes. We're gonna have a whole
Yes,
podcast theme out here.
that's right. So are they gonna have my information somewhere?
I was
Is it
gonna
gonna be
say,
on
so
your
you
site?
can tell us your your name of your company, your
Okay.
contact info, and it's gonna be in the description later.
Okay, yeah. So it's we're veteran law without without the vowels, VTRNLW.com. We have a contact form on there. You can see my staff, even the office cat Donnie. And and we have you can contact us at info@vtrnlw.com, or you can call us at 540-862-0019. Again, my staff is wholly competent and they're
Right.
mostly pleasant. Actually, I try to make them be. I try to keep them happy. So, but you can talk to them about anything. If you shoot us a message or something, somebody's going to respond to you. I tell them we have to respond in 24 hours, unless it's a weekend or holiday. But
And they
yeah, just
respond.
be careful who you work with and make sure that they're VA accredited is all I say. And don't be afraid to do it right away, because why go through all the effort of trying to figure it out when somebody else, we do the work for you. You just have to go to the exams.
Just got to go to the exams, and they
Just
make
got to go to
that
the exams.
easy for you as well. Well, I
Exactly.
appreciate you again. So make sure y'all tell your Congress people to go for the GUARD Act. The GUARD Act is what
All
helps
right.
us. Okay.
Yes, it does. Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, stay on the line. So Ivan said I'm emailing her immediately.
Yeah,
Immediately. Okay, that's the Ebonics
that's
version.
awesome.
So
That's awesome.
thank you all for staying on, and please stay on, Kristen. So until next time, y'all, it's your favorite veteran, and we are
Yep.
out.